Whakataka te ho ki te uru, whakataka te ho ki te tonga. Kia makina, kina ki uta, kia matara, tara ki tai. Ehi ake ana te atakura, he tio, he hoko, he ho hu, ti he mori ora. Good morning and welcome, everyone. I have apologies for lateness from Sam McDonald. Would someone like to move that? Tim Scandrett, seconded by Aaron Kewen. Put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That is carried. No declarations of interest advised in advance of the meeting. So we move on to public participation. No public forum presentations, but we do have a deputation by appointment. Don Gould regarding item 13, Christchurch Wastewater Treatment Plant Recovery Update. Kia ora and welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. I'll keep this brief. I've just popped in to give a little bit of an update on some of the community action that we've sort of been forging ahead with online. We've set up a Facebook group over the weekend in an effort to pull some of the social media content out of some of the other online groups, and also to be able to provide an easier channel for some of the community who are keen to engage to find out what's going on, comment and just share their feedback. We've also set up a bit of a website which is basically just a dumping ground for putting interesting information, links, or there is a bit of a help page there where we've started to build a bit of a community response. We understand how important the concept of community-led responses in this council, so we've tried to be a bit of community and actually do some leading. We've done some of this as well so that we can measure and gauge the amount of concern that is actually out there in the community. It's very, very difficult to see when that concern is spread over sort of 20 different Facebook groups. It's a little bit easier to measure when it's in one place. There is also a community meeting on Friday, which I'm reporting back on, which some members of the community are busy organising at present. I know that you guys have all been invited. I believe some of you are attending, so I won't dwell on that. And that's about my lot, unless there are questions.
Thank you very much, and couldn't agree more on the community-led response, so thank you for the update. Are there any questions for Don?
I have
Anne?
Yeah, thank you, Don. From what you've heard, what are some of the key needs in terms of well-being that people are expressing?
There is an extensive range of concerns out there that range from the financial implications, the health implications, and communications. The biggest one I would stress for you folk here at present is communication and the need to keep a very, very regular positive feed of comms coming out. We're in a 24-hour news cycle. It's really reduced to an hour-long news cycle. One of the things I've tried to achieve with this Facebook group is to just get ahead of the community concern by just feeding them something on a regular basis, which means that they feel like someone actually gives a toss about this issue. We don't have to run around and be constantly pelted with, oh, staff haven't done this, or that person should stand down, or there's an election, blah, blah, blah. If we give them something, give people some hope and feedback, they feel like they're communicated with.
One more question, just in terms of the NGOs and the community support groups that are active in the communities, what are you seeing?
Very little, to be quite honest, which is probably a good thing. One of what I've sort of, the barometer read I'm getting across the community, Anne, is that there are concerns, but people are certainly not at breaking point at this stage. To give you some idea, we've got 90,000 affected residents by the stench on the eastern side of the city. Some people had a really good go at drumming out awareness of this issue over social media over the weekend, and all we've vacuumed up is just under 1,000 participants in a Facebook group, which in some respects is a positive sign that the community certainly isn't breaking at this point, but it is also a good indication that we have to keep our foot on the gas in responding to this. You folk conceded in this chamber last week that the ball was sort of a bit dropped. I made the point on national TV that, in fact, that ball is now being picked up and people are scrambling to respond to it. And I think that the community, while being very annoyed about it, are also quite positive about, well, they're seeing some action. Certainly yesterday's announcements that work will start today was an excellent move in response, but we are now going to need to actually see that work. We're going to need to see some media reports today of those trucks turning up, of the people on site, that sort of thing.
I don't want to go ahead of the presentation, but I think when you watch the presentation, that the site setup is one thing. The actual, because you've got to build a ramp up to even the first one to start taking the stuff out. But I'll leave it to the experts to say that. But we're expecting at the end of Queen's birthday weekend is our expectation in terms of when the media starts getting dragged out. So, but we're going to have the briefing, and I've scheduled it for 11:15 so that people can tune in to a known time. It's our end of our morning tea break. And so we'll be dealing first up after morning tea with the wastewater treatment plant update. Aaron?
Yeah, Don, I think 1,000 odd people into your page in less than a week's quite impressive, actually. So that's good engagement with the public. Are you putting a smellometer on there where people on various days say, yeah, we can smell it today, or no, the winds move, we're not smelling it, so we kind of see an active heat map?
ECAN has actually done an outstanding job of actually providing a really robust tool to do that. Now, there is concern and question about how that tool actually works, because some mornings you log on and you see there is actually absolutely no response at all. So does that mean that the stench has gone away for the day, which would be fabulous? However, the tool appears to, and I haven't spoken to ECAN, so I don't know exactly how it works, but how it appears to work is that previous reports after about 24 hours drop off that tool. What we saw over the weekend was literally over Mother's Day, a love heart type image created over the city in bright yellow showing the response. To me, what that says as much isn't necessarily that there's a bigger problem than there was on Saturday. It says that the community is becoming more engaged and more concerned around this issue, so they are stepping up to make that reporting. However, at the same time, people don't have all day to sit there and just load up the smell app, choose how intense they think it is, check their address is correct, check the time is correct, select the option to say what kind of smell they think they can smell, add a comment, and then click OK to send it off to the report. It would certainly be interesting to get some feedback from ECAN about exactly what that data is saying day by day. But I think that really, as you've seen in my presentation this morning, I've got some metrics coming off the website which have shown very little actual pass-through from social media through to the website, which gives you a really good indication. If people are really concerned, they'll follow links and be hungry for information. If they're just bothered about it at the stage and annoyed at the lack of action they perceive, then those are different things. So there are lots of measures that are going on at present which sort of feed into my response this morning.
Yeah, that's actually really good feedback. So thanks for that, and thanks for setting this up and doing it. And one last thing, your wife Joanna presented the annual plan. She did a great job, and I just want to know her secret for getting you not to say a word for an entire deputation.
Very harsh, very harsh.
Through the chair, may I respond to the member?
Oh, I think you should. I think you should ignore it as I have. The thing that I did want to just query is that, do you think that there's a good understanding out there about, the fact that the weather makes a big difference to what you can smell? I mean, a group of us went out there on Tuesday morning and literally stood on top and I imagined that I was going to be sort of rocked off my socks with the stench, but not on that day because of the weather conditions. They were perfect.
Leanne, yes, The general public, I think, do understand that the prevailing winds impact this issue quite significantly.
It's more the rain and the drying out. So it's rain followed by hot days. That's the issue, because it creates that real rotten stench of the degrading biofilter.
Well, thank you for sharing that view. It's not one we currently agree with.
Oh, okay.
Interestingly, this is part of the reason why we have been pushing for council to immediately make the air quality testing information available in detail to the general public, because there are scientists out there who are capable of interpreting that information and forming questions around it. One of the questions we have currently is one of those really, really, really stinky gases isn't actually visible through the entire plant. It doesn't become particularly visible, and it's at a measure of 107 parts per billion currently. It can be detected, according to your report, your advisor's report, at 2 parts per billion. So it is 50 parts per billion higher, 50 times higher rather than the detectable level. And that is coming out at the outfall, actually into the ponds itself. And that's one of the things that is most smelly at present. So exactly what all of this stuff means, Leanne, people aren't completely sure. But what we are sure of...
That was my question, was that are people aware of the different days?
No, they're not completely. But what we've managed to do, I feel, in the social media space is rise up some confidence that we are getting a better quality flow of information out there. And what the feedback I'm getting from the chain of experts that I have around me that are not part of the council is actually that there isn't great concern for public health from what we're seeing at this stage. What there is concern of is the mental health of people and how the anguish is affecting them.
No, we totally agree. All right, look, thank you very much for your presentation this morning. And as I say, the item that you have presented on will be dealt with at 11:15 straight after morning tea.
You're welcome. Thank you for, again, the opportunity to present these issues and have the community heard at the table.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the presentation of petitions, and there are none. And I'd like to move that we include the supplementary report, being my report, in the meeting agenda and deal with it today. Seconded by Andrew. Put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Like to move the council meetings of the 5th of minutes of the 5th of May. Do I have a seconder for that? Tim Scandra. Put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That is carried. And now we move on to the Community Board monthly reports, and I would like to invite each of those to make their presentation, starting with Waitai Coastal Burwood Community Board Chairperson Kelly Barber, accompanied by Christina Bullock, Community Governance Manager.
Thank you, Leanne. Good morning, everybody. So this is our report for May. So a couple of decisions made under delegation. I'll take it as read, but the approval of a dynamic pricing rate strategy for the South Brighton motor camp was passed recently, and also we approved a certificate of appreciation to a local Brooklands resident, Peter Curry, for his generosity and thoughtful actions. So during some recent surface flooding, after a significant rain event, he got down there with some pumps and pumped out a bit of the water down Earlham Street, which has had ongoing issues. And the community wanted to recognise him, so we organised something there. Brooklands Community Pantry is about as big as it gets. So during a weekly drop-in session with residents in the Brooklands community who we're looking to sort of re-engage with a bit, an idea came up for an opportunity for locally grown and homemade kai to be sort of shared with others. So they identified a bus stop and put some I guess created the opportunity for sort of homemade food to be put in there, and it's been utilised well. But I'd particularly like to congratulate our governance staff on their positive kind of re-engagement with the community. They've been through a lot. There's only a few houses there, but they have a few issues, and our governance staff have been sort of re-engaging with them, and that's been going well. So thanks for that. So this is an initiative of the South Shore Residents Association. So they established a petanque court, which is in the red zone area, and that was in late 2021. So late last year. It was installed by the Parks unit. There was a bit of an issue as to where to store all the accoutrements of petanque, and the local New Brighton Men's Shed came to the party and made a box for it in March of this year. So the South Shore Residents Association has basically challenged all the other residents associations in the New Brighton general area to an inaugural petanque off championship. So good connection, good collaboration, and something that's going to highlight that initiative to the rest of the area. So we also held a Residents Association forum. This was on the 29th of March. It was held on Zoom. It was for our local residents associations to hear from staff, which is something somewhat unique. They don't often hear from staff. And we felt that there were two items for consultation that they would like to hear on. One was the draft annual plan, and the other one was the Heathcote Estuary and Coastal Draft Stormwater Management Plan. Staff did a good job of putting all that information out there. We had representatives from 9 residents associations who attended the forum. This was particularly useful on a number of levels, but particularly for us as a board in providing our community board with kind of feedback, and which we use to form our submissions for the annual plan and for the stormwater management plan. So very useful. I just want to finish on 2 positive notes. So first is the opening of the Bridge Hub, which a number of you attended. I know Councillor Donovan was there, and Councillor Major, and I think there are a few others as well. This is fantastic. Sorry?
The mayor.
Sorry?
The mayor.
The mayor, yeah. I knew there was somebody important. Yeah. I missed you there somewhere. I was going to highlight the fact that you presented them with a painting, which I thought was absolutely fantastic. For those of you that don't know, it's in the central picture there. Leanne presented them with a painting that she bought 6 years ago, which is of Bridge Street, just down from the Bridge Hub. And it shows a picture of a crane, which you can't see there, and cones, etc. Perhaps you could explain that at the end of the presentation. The beauty of this organisation is that it is totally run by the community. They identified an area that they wanted to turn into a community facility. They spent a lot of time working at it, lots of volunteers, lots of people on the committee. They worked really hard. I can remember going to an early meeting shortly after I was elected, and they were wondering where their next dollar was going to come from. And but they never gave up. They just kept the faith, kept going, and then they were very fortunate in that they were ready for the shovel-ready funding that came along, and they were one of a number of groups that were wrangled by the Christchurch East MP Porto Williams. They got the funding to finish the venue. It looks absolutely fantastic. They have, I think they've got resource consent to have something like 12 functions a year to certain periods of time, like till maybe midnight. So it'll be a true community facility. Another thing that they did, which is somewhat innovative, is not have a commercial operator for their cafe. They wanted to be able to control when they couldn't use the facility. They did a bit of investigation there. So look, it's absolutely fantastic. A great facility, really, really beautiful. I've got one more thing to add, but did you want to say something about that painting, Leanne? Because I know they really appreciated that.
Bridget Allen. So the story is that I bought it because it was sort of evocative of a period of time, and it's called the Bridge Street Monument, and so I gifted the Bridge Street Monument to the new Bridge Street Monument, which is the hub. And the amazing thing, and this is just one of those serendipitous moments, but they came up to me afterwards and they said, Bridget just lives down the road, and she's exhibiting in the gallery of artists that we have outside, which have things made for sale, and she'll be coming here this afternoon. So I had one of those tingly moments where it was, but I've moved into an apartment that isn't big enough for all my artwork. So, but from the moment that we made the contribution to kick this off, I wanted to give this to them. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was a really nice touch, and I know they really appreciated it. And it, from people who are local to the area will really appreciate that. So I guess the last thing I'd like to finish off with is with thanks to the council staff and police for the brilliant way that they handled the Burwood red zone occupation. These are always tricky situations, and obviously some of the local residents weren't happy with the speed with which things were happening. But I think it was first-class communication from the council. Every day there were emails, or every few days there were emails to board members and our councillors, and we were able to disseminate that information and explain the situation and sort of take the heat out of it. And I think I really just can't thank the police and the council staff who dealt with those protesters enough to help us avoid a situation that 30 years ago would have been vastly different. So situation resolved, and I think it's the way forward for dealing with these sorts of situations. So thank you very much appreciated.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your report. Is that the end of the time?
Yes,
yeah.
It was well over.
Oh, sorry, well over. That was probably my fault. So thank you very much for the presentation. We've got the Bridge Street Hub coming, hopefully for a deputation or a presentation, and on the 20, it's the matching date from when they came and asked for the money. So yeah, that's good.
Great.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you, Chris.
Now I'm going to ask Waihoro's Braden Cashmere Community Board report to come forward and invite Carolyn Potter to come to the table with Matt McClintock.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to the people shoved down below me. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to come and head off. The board has two small issues that came before it: the installation of bus stop restrictions on Rose Street, and the proposals for the council's draft annual plan and the submissions, and the draft district plan changes, which we are doing at the moment. Callum Ward, a community board member from Addington, has raised with the board informally, but also with other people, the issue that all of us have been concerned about, which is the increase in vape shops, particularly in Addington. Addington now has 4 vape shops. Have we got our...
Yeah.
I just wanted to... Yeah, you can't see, and I wish the photographs were a little bit bigger, but there are 2 vape shops in that block, one of which looks quite posh on the right-hand side, and right next door to it is a vape shop. And then there's Vape Planet over there on the other side, and then there's another vape shop further down the road. And this is incongruously, of course, opposite a flag which advertises a pub. So Addington is 4 vape shops in 0.9 of a kilometre, which is what the Addington shops are. It's not even a K along that road stretch, 0.9 of a kilometre. 4 vape shops is quite a lot of vape shops to be in. Thank you. It's quite a lot of vape shops in one small area. We know that the government is considering the licensing of the selling of cigarettes. I hope that when they do initiate the licensing for the selling of cigarettes, and presumably this will mean fewer shops selling cigarettes, I hope that vaping is included in it, because its danger to children especially is far greater than was ever imagined when it was considered something that could wean people off smoking. And this is not conducive to a village atmosphere in the oldest village in Christchurch. And I would like to think that people would take it, government and city council, when discussing this issue, will take into consideration the way Addington should look and should be, instead of a place where you buy alcohol and cigarettes and vape. Community projects. We have heard from different residents with possible safety improvements in the Addington area. The council may remember that at one stage the issue of Addington's speed limit held the council up for half an hour in terms of discussing it. We had recommended to council that it be 30k in Addington. Addington people wanted 30k. And as it turned out, the discussion round the table indicated that council at that time wanted 30k as well. But we were advised by staff on that occasion that the lowest we could go for Addington was 40k. They have come back to us. They're a patient, dedicated group, the Addington Neighbourhood Association. They are a committed group. They've written their own history. And they have now come back to us again wanting a 30k speed limit in Addington. And our board, think that this should not only be initiated, but initiated quickly. It used to be that you couldn't bring the speed limit down, and that was the rule for the suburbs. But now that we've got Wolston at 30k on Ferry Road, there's no reason why Addington, with its narrow streets, crowded streets, 2 schools as well as a heavily populated church, lots of people on the streets, Salvation Army running addiction programs. As long as we've got all of this activity in Addington, there is just no reason why the people doing a rat run from the motorway through Addington to Selwyn Street should be allowed to go any faster than 30k. So we would like this issue to be reconsidered extremely quickly. I'll remind the council that when they discussed it those years ago, which was about 5 years, when they discussed it, they asked for the issue to come back to them at that time. So here we are, we're coming back. We will be coming back more formally, and we want the residents this time to get their way in terms of the speed limit in Addington. If ever there was a suburb that should be going slow, it's Addington. Thank you. But yeah. The board would be keen to be kept up to date with the long-awaited renovations to South Library and Beckham Service Centre. I'm going to indulge myself for one sentence. When I was chair of the Beckenham Neighbourhood Association 25 years ago, I negotiated for I pressed the council not to sell this piece of land on which the Beckenham Library is situated and the service centre, which is what the council wanted to do. They wanted to sell this land. This library, as I've said before, is the most loved library in Christchurch, and it was the first library in the new libraries with coffee bars, etc. And I'm really hoping that the renovation of the library goes extremely well, the moat's removed, there's more light for staff, and that the staff's wishes on the issues are kept very close to the hearts of the people who are looking at how they're going to revive the building. The Port Hills Trust Board is frustrated with the spate of thefts from the Mount Vernon car park, including, and you can't see it here, but it's a gigantic macrocarpa table with seats attached, which was taken away this week. There's no end to what they can pinch, apparently. And there's been a large number of robberies from cars in the car park, and they are trying to put up TV cameras as we speak. And even macrocarpa tables nailed to the ground have been removed by people looking for further furniture for their homes, presumably. So we're helping them out, and we hope, and we probably will be helping them out with their cameras. But we understand that thefts on the Port Hills are endemic, and we have had the police in to talk to us about it, and we're just hoping that the spate passes like all other things have passed. We had the Mother of All Cleanups. The Mother of All Cleanups was initiated in our ward. One of the initiators, Helene, was a previous community board member. She was one of the founders of the River Network, and this Mother of All Cleanups was started, we like to think, with us, and it is enthusiastically supported by our community board, and people always volunteer for the work that gets done. It's marvellous to see the numbers of rubbish bags that are removed from all over the place, and shopping trolleys, of course, and scooters these days that you get out of the river. And as you'll see there's some of the people who are active in the river network and are associated with our community board. Thank you.
Great. Well, look, thank you very much for your presentation this morning. We've sort of come to the end of the time for the presentation, but I really appreciate you coming in and presenting, and equal concern around the vaping shops. But we're going to get some advice on the speed limit too as a result of your presentation. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm arranging with staff to catch up over the cameras situation.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Oh, thanks, Tim.
Great. Right, the next one is Waimero, Pendleton Waimairi, Linwood Community Board. Bridget Williams is online.
Yeah, kia ora everyone. Thank you so much. And I also just want to acknowledge that I believe Marianne Lomax is in person as well, physically waving our board flag in person. So thank you so much. So yeah, we'll take you through
from
what
the back of the room.
Is she? Okay, sorry Marianne, don't mean to single you out. But yeah, so the power of technology. So I'll take you through what's been going on with our board in May. First of all, we've got decisions made under delegations. So there's been a few road names and just no stopping restrictions. And then there's also been discretionary response fund applications. And I just want to say that it's been really great to work with our traffic staff, because a lot of these issues around, especially with the no stopping restrictions and that sort of thing, and they've come from the community, and staff have been really proactive to look into these issues. So it's wonderful that there are such active citizens out there coming to the board, noticing that there are safety issues with the road, and then staff finding out the information for us and how we can proceed. So that's been working really well. And then speaking of roads and traffic safety and that sort of thing, moving on to the next slide. So I'm sure Councillor Goff will agree that this is an issue that we are getting numerous calls about. So the issues we're hearing about are mainly in the area bordered by Heaton Street, Russell Street, Carden Mill Road and Up Papanui Road. This area contains, so it's really busy because it contains 5 schools, a hospital, a shopping mall, and it's experienced quite significant housing intensification, which is likely to increase. And the key issues tend to be around parking and speed. A number of streets in the area are also very narrow, and we've had discussions with staff from our transport team, and hopefully we can get some improvements made. So we acknowledge that there are a number of programs underway, like the slow speed neighbourhoods and the suburban parking policy, that need to be taken into consideration as well. So there's a few moving parts, but we thought we'd just flag this with you today, as it is highly likely this will be a board plan priority for the new term. So it's something that our residents come to, and we're really keen to work with the residents so we can make Maryvale parking and the traffic safety that much better. Moving on to the next slide. So you may remember that we've had the capacity building training for local community groups. It's something we've talked about in our reports before, and just updating you on our training series for these local community groups. So last week, a session was held on conflict management, and the workshop gave participants basic understanding and appreciation of how to resolve conflict constructively, reducing their fear and allowing them to keep their relationships strong and growing whilst avoiding harm. And next week, we will be running a session by NetSafe on staying safe online. So topics to be covered include privacy, fake news, scams, the Harmful Digital Communications Act, and how NetSafe can help. What's great is there's no cost for the groups to attend these sessions. And this is once again been feedback from people from our community group saying that these are areas that they would like more information in. So they're wonderful sessions. And then moving on to the next slide. Perfect. Yeah, the Jeffrey Reserve. So after a number of years of planning, work has started upgrading the pump station in Jeffrey's Reserve. So the existing water storage tank was damaged in the February 2011 earthquake and is currently out of use. There are also 4 wells in the park, 2 are operational and 2 are not. And the purpose of this project is to replace the water tank, get all 4 wells working, and carry out all other necessary works to ensure a safe and secure water supply. So the work is expected to take 12 months to complete, but it's great that there are physically people getting out there now and putting the Jeffreys Reserve pump station in, which is fantastic. So that's our board report. If there are any questions, happy to take them, but thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. We've come to the end of the presentation time, but look, thank you, Bridget, for your presentation this morning. It's much appreciated.
No worries. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next one is Waipuna, Hallsville, Hornby, Riccarton Community Board, Mike Mora. And who's on?
Good morning.
Morning.
Gives me great pleasure to present our report to you today. We do have an apology from my deputy, Helen Broughton, who was unable to join me this morning. But moving on, we've the decisions we made under delegation, road names in Hallsville Junction Road, Super Street tree removal as part of the deep dish channel replacement. So, and 10-minute parking restrictions in Avenger Crescent and Jones Road, Dawson's Road intersection stop control. There is some other issues we've got with that intersection, but anyway, our board only had input into the stop control, which we've made this recommendation to the council on. And we've also discretionary response funds from the Riccarton Bush Trust for its program in the bush enhancement and the Enrich Community Chaplaincy Trust. So that was our decisions under delegation. And moving on then to our next slide, which is the update on the Hornby Centre project. Piling is now 60% complete, so that's really, really good. It's amazing the noise that comes from driving those miles. And I'm sure the school will be pleased when the schools in the area will be pleased when it's finished. But anyway, they will have the enjoyment, of course, of a beautiful facility just across the road. The design is underway now for the hydrotherapy pool, which is getting community support for funding as well, which is really, really exciting. And there's a bit of a hold up, of course, with the remaining piling with global shipping issues is a challenge. And another exciting part here is the Hornby High School expressed interest in having students involved in the construction. And when I was aware of that, I thought, well, that's absolutely wonderful to think that if the contractor allows it for the school students to be involved in that, so it gives them a bit of ownership as well as exciting memories in years to come of and who knows what it might lead to as far as trade training is concerned after that as well. So that's quite exciting, and we really appreciate the momentum that's going with that. Our next slide, please. Yes, this is exciting as well. The Waimaori Road Community Centre refurbishment has been completed. it'd be really good if our board could go and have a visit to that actually and have a look at it. And we've also got the Harvard Lounge and the High Community Centre being refurbished as well. So that's really, really good. So the Harvard Lounge is underway now, as is the High Community Centre. So that's very exciting progress. Next slide, please. Now, this is very, very exciting as well, as the Peace Rock has now been installed, and the project was first proposed to the board in June 2019 when a deputation from Riccarton residents supported by the Oak Development Trust. And the board was approached about the introduction of a peace garden in Harrington Park to honour cultural unity following the terror attacks of the 15th of March. So that plaque has now been installed, and there's been a lot of community help and involvement in that as well. And I just want to say at this point in time that on this Sunday, the 15th, at Harrington Park at 2:30 p.m. will be the unveiling of that. So that's a really, really, and the wording on that plaque is well worth reading as well. And it was written by a local person from other culture. So our next one, please, is Templeton School Bus. Got a walking to school bus, and it's very successful, and it's growing. So I think that's something that we're well aware of how well that works in other parts of our city, and it's great to see that happening in Templeton as well, because they've got a busy road there that they've got to cross. But anyway, that's quite exciting. And the other thing I want to mention is our submissions committee has been very busy, as probably other community boards have as well. So I just want to acknowledge the work that's gone in from our board members through the submissions committee process, and the help and support that we've had from staff through this time of COVID restrictions and Zooming and the inability for us to get together around the table to do these submissions has been a big challenge. But anyway, and it is ongoing as well. So I'd just like to take my hat off to staff and our submissions committee for the work that they're doing on behalf of our residents and the City of Christchurch. And that's it from me, really.
That's very good. We've come to the end of the presentation time, so thank you very much for your presentation this morning.
You're very, very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Next one is Waikura, Linwood Central Heathcote Community Board, Alexandra Davids, and accompanied by Arahanui Grace.
Yes. Kia ora everybody, thank you so much for having us this morning to present what has been happening in our board area, and thank you to Arahanui for pushing the buttons. Very professional. We have several Part A's to council today. I have spoken about them at our last council meeting that we presented at. So we have the Wolston Community Centre and the lease being granted to Te Waka Inua School. Just a little recap, this is obviously something the board fully supports, especially with the agreement from the school that they will be more active within the community and allowing those community groups to actually be using the facility, which has not been used for a while now. This will give members in our community, families and tamariki the opportunity to be more educated and have small events and music lessons and things like that. So we're really thankful for the opportunity for the school to take over that lease. We also have the slow speed neighbourhoods. They are obviously part of the National Strategy Road to Zero program. And the one that we have in front of you today is the Scarborough slow speed zones. This is a pretty simple report. We're just revoking speed limits of 50 to 40, which totally makes sense on some of those more dangerous roads. There was also a comment around Flowers Track, which is actually a walking track. While staff have said 40 kilometres is not the goal, maybe it is on the walking track. We could have runners 40k an hour, I don't know. But yeah, we totally support these speeds being lowered. Anzac Day commemorations. While it was unfortunate that we had several Anzac Day services cancelled this year, especially in the central city, we still had commemorations in some of our communities. So board members were able to go and place wreaths at these commemoration services. And it was great to see the community able to get out and about and still be able to have the services. Obviously, we had COVID issues and some potential issues around protesting, but we were still able to recognise our fallen. So just wanted to bring that up today. The Apawaho Lower Stockbank project. We just want to say thank you to the council for taking the report off the table last week in order for both the Linwood Central Heathcote Community Board and the Spratt and Cashmere Board to get more information so we can communicate with our communities in a more informed way. So we're just waiting for information now around a time where we will be having a joint briefing, so then we can go back to our communities and inform them of what is happening, but also get feedback from them. So thank you very much for that. Youth Week. As you know, youth participation and advocacy is a really big thing for the Waikura board, and we've supported a range of activities for our youth over this term. But this week has been a really full-on week with many activities. Yesterday we were attending a briefing via Zoom, and we were able to have the 3-on-3 basketball competition live streamed to us for a short while. And it was awesome to see heaps of youth taking part. This morning we actually had an update on numbers, and last night alone we had over 200 young people at the event. It's been awesome to see youth organisations working together to pull these events together. Building a collaborative spirit has been a focus of the board and the governance team over this term, and we are seeing proof now of the success from all the work that has gone on behind the scenes. We have had a comment also from a National Youth Development Specialist who was attending the basketball event last night, that this was the best program for Youth Events Week that he has seen rolled out over the whole country. So just a massive thank you to all of the organisations that have been part of making this such a successful thing, and we hope that other areas will be able to pick up on the work that has been done on our side of town. On to the Eid Festival. So our governance team provided capacity building and event support to the cultural group Astrolab to plan and deliver the wildly successful Eid Festival last Saturday night at the Commons. It was a celebration of culture and the first open Eid Festival in the country. It was open to all, both Muslim and non-Muslim, and a great mix of people attended. There was a wonderful food for sale, games for children, music and entertainment. You can see from the photos it looked pretty wild. It looks great. I just wanted to bring up our flagpole in Sumner. So this has been a wee ongoing saga. But I'd like to say thanks to Daryl Latham for bringing it to the board's attention. At the Matuku Taku Taku site, there was a flagpole prior to the earthquakes on the old Borough Council building, which became the museum and community centre. The Historical Society has lobbied for the reinstallation of the flagpole since the building was demolished and plans were being made for the new building. The RSA has also requested a flagpole being installed some years ago, and recent communication with them indicates that they are also keen to be part of the process for the reinstallation of a flag. We also really welcome the suggestion to decouple the issue of civic flags from this local issue. And I just want to finish my presentation today with a thank you to Don Gold for the update this morning, and also a thanks to Caleb that has organised the meeting for Friday off his own back. He's just a member of the community, not just a member, he's a member of the community, so that's like a big effort. And we want to say thank you to staff for attending on Friday as well. So I think it's important that we're all working together and being fully informed when it comes to this issue in particular, and it's really great to see staff taking a role in that. And of course, thanks to residents for their ongoing patience and their active involvement on this issue that's affecting so many. Thank you.
Thank you. There's just a couple of things. One, Pauline and I and Yanni are all going, so the invitations come through, and I think they had an expectation that elected members would come. So
Yeah. I've said I'm going.
So, but we're getting staff support for that. But I think that on the day it's about being there for the community. The second thing is that I have an additional resolution that I just prepared in the meantime. That council staff work with the Sumner Historical Society, the Sumner RSA, and the Waikura Linwood Central Heathcote Community Board to install an appropriate replacement flagpole either on or adjacent to Mataku Takotako Sumner Centre for use by the Sumner community. And you're absolutely right, they're two separate issues. The civic and international relations advice should not have got caught up in a community issue. So it seems relatively straightforward to have a fix. So thank you for bringing it to our attention. And also I'd like to acknowledge Councillor Templeton, who originally raised it with me, and Councillor Johansson as well. So we're at the end of the time. I just wanted to deal with those two issues.
I think it would be appropriate to just acknowledge the staff effort into the Eid Festival. It was turned into an event in weeks, whereas normally that kind of event takes months to plan. And so I just wanted to acknowledge the huge effort that went into it. It was a great event, so thank you.
Thanks, Anne.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. That photo you had showing the flagpoles on, is that, for some reason I've understood that they wanted to put it on the end of the building, if I misunderstood something.
We're leaving it to the community board to work with the Historical Society and the Sumner RSA to get a solution, and it's either or. It could be either or.
Yeah, that was just an artist's impression.
That was an artist's impression that was early on.
Okay, no, that's fine. No, just I was involved with Porter Williams, and we did a flagpole down at the Aranui Wainoni RSA, and I can tell you exactly how much a flagpole cost because I bought it. It was $2,500. So,
excellent.
So she contributed to a lot.
I'd be prepared to accept it.
No problem. So we don't have to go crazy, but it's not on the wall. It's on the ground. So
but we're leaving it to local ones, but it's going to happen, and that's to me is the beauty of the situation.
Thanks, Phil.
All right. Well, look, thank you very much for your presentation today, and
thank you.
Look forward to the next report, which hopefully has the resolution reported back.
That would be great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
The next one is Waipapa Papanui Innes Community Board. Emma Norris, Simon Britton here. Yep, and Simon Britton. I always do this. Who is that masked man? Right.
Kia ora koutou, thank you for having us along today. It's great to be back reporting to you in person. We do have one part A on your agenda today. It's the Shirley Slow Speed Neighbourhood. It's a fairly straightforward recommendation, which we hope you'll follow. But I would like to make the point that a lot of the feedback received on the proposal talked about the need for traffic calming to slow vehicles in the area. So our recommendation includes a note that speeds will be monitored and that traffic calming will be considered if required. At our April meeting, we approved a right turn bay and no stopping areas on Marshlands Road at the Turners Road intersection. We approved some new road and lane names in the Oakbridge subdivision, as well as receiving our area report, from which we're going to highlight a few things for you now.
Something that we brought to council a meeting or two ago was a request from the community in Shirley for plantings to form a Birdsong Trail through Mcfarlane Park in Shirley. There's some really great activations and projects and things happening through Mcfarlane Park. This is another one that we think has some real potential, and we requested, and staff now have connected with the members of the community that have requested that and taken a walk through that park just to really discuss the aspiration and to look at the possibilities there. The word blank canvas is in there somewhere in terms of some of the opportunities in that park. So yeah, we're really hopeful to see that through, but we do thank staff for their support for it so far.
Last month saw 95 gardeners in our area receive their 2022 Garden Pride Award certificates. Although we were unable to hold an awards ceremony this year, it was still great to be able to recognise these people who put so much effort into their gardens, and we thank all of them.
We've also had our Edible and Sustainable Garden Awards. This year, again, we haven't had an event around that, but we did give recipients the option to be presented with certificates in person. Should they wish to do so, you can see a few of them there. I probably shouldn't pick out people in particular, but I do want to acknowledge Ivan Hibbard, who's in the photo on the left, who's a Belfast resident who's participated in these awards every year since their inception, and has got an amazing garden up there, and a couple of community groups that we've presented certificates pictured there as well.
Next up, this is a picture of the Sheldon Park netball courts, which have finally been resurfaced. Though the courts had gotten to the point where the Belfast Netball Club were unable to use them due to their poor state. So it's great to finally have them back up to this standard. So thank you for staff for that.
This week we've got works on Langdon's Road constructing a couple of pedestrian refuge islands up the road from this picture. To improve safety for some of our vulnerable road users there. And what will next be underway is what you can see in this picture, which is some improvements at the roundabout. Those who go through this area will know this is a super, super busy spot, and it's become increasingly busy in recent years. So this is mostly, there's not a lot of room to move here. There's some real space constraints. So the project here is around paint and surface treatments, tactile pavers, some pedestrian hold rails, doing what can be done to tune that intersection for cycle safety through it, especially with increasing vehicle traffic through that area. This is a project that's being done by staff through a staff delegation. It didn't require a board decision, but the board's been fully informed through that process. There's been engagement with key stakeholders in the community there as well, including with Kiwi Property, who own the mall that's in one corner of that shot. They're in full support of this as well. So you're really looking forward to doing everything we can along that whole corridor along Langdon's Road to continue to improve safety for the whole community there.
And then finally for our report this week, we've had ongoing engagement with residents of both Flockton Street and Francis Avenue in St Albans since the CNC opened, as both streets have experienced a noticeable increase in traffic volumes. Last month we held an online meeting with residents of each street, where staff presented data and discussed possibilities for trialling traffic calming measures on those streets. There were some good discussions had at both meetings, and staff are progressing the trial options as quickly as they can in order to provide some relief for these residents, because it is having a big impact on their lives. And that's us.
Pauline, and then
thank you. Just quickly, look, with the Birdsong Trail coming through, the idea there with the Shirley Community Trust leading that with all the other agencies in there,
there is a big question hanging over that because, Leanne, you might remember Kāinga Ora were doing some work in there to put in a housing project and do some land swaps to replace the green space. Now, that's gone on hold, and I don't know, or we don't know where it's at. I got hold of someone at Kāinga Ora who was very iffy about it and vague and was going to get back. So is there any way this organisation could look into getting a response on where the planning is for that and whether it has been officially dropped?
I'll
Please,
take that.
that'd be good. And just quickly, Leanne, secondly, there's a on the alcohol licensing. It's not in this report because it's probably done too early, but there's an application for a new outlet at 565 Barbados Street. That's the Barbados Edgeware Shopping Centre there. It's a very small shopping centre, so it's a brand new application for a brand new business, and there's quite a bit of community kickback on that, and the submissions close on Sunday. Thank you. Oh no, the 18th. Sorry, that's next week. The 18th of May.
Great. Celeste? Okay. Aaron?
On the Birdsong one, because there's always been security issues around there, will it pass a TED assessment because of
That
creates
would
hollow places to hide?
part of what staff are looking at. That park has come a long way over recent years. The community garden in there has made a big difference. Having the Mcfarlane Park Centre and that northern end of it has also made a difference. And the murals down the other end towards the school, it's changed a lot.
Great. Awesome.
Right. Okay. Look, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
And appreciate you coming on for that. Thank you. And the last of the community boards, I think, is Te Pātika o Rakai Hotu, Exponentially Community Board, Chair Tori Peden, and I think you don't have Tyrone with you, and Penelope Goldstone.
Morena, we'll skip that one. We're going to jump into our update and then we'll come back to our Part A shortly. So, bit of good news in the area. The site, there's been a new cell site been switched on above Little River. So the site will allow an extra 150 homes and businesses and nearly 3 kilometres of State Highway 75 access to reliable 4G, wireless broadband and voice calling services. This is part of the Rural Connectivity Program to avoid black spots of the highway and improve rural access technology. The locals are loving it. Next one. Cruise ships. So with Aotearoa's marine borders now due to reopen, preparations are underway to address the return of cruise ships to Aotearoa and Littleton. The new berth in Littleton will be available for cruise ships for the first time this season as Littleton returns to a familiar pre-quake cruise activity. While there are 82 existing bookings for the coming season, many are placeholders or and dates pre-COVID times. From pre-COVID times, the Littleton Port Company is anticipating between 40 and 50 cruise ships bookings for this season. For Aotearoa, it's expected that there will be significant fewer cruise ships and reduced passenger numbers than the post-quake season. Many community members and other stakeholders remain invested in ensuring their environmental, ecological, social and heritage is protected and prioritised in the area. As the board and our communities look ahead to the return of cruise ships and passengers to be Exponentially, it is becoming more important than ever that thorough, thoughtful and focused destination management plan is in place to ensure responsible tourism, strong environmental protection and community preparedness. Another bit of good news is very pleased to share that the residents that Eastern Bay's regained access across the main road dropout at Goffs Bay Road. This is a significant milestone for the communities that have been severely impacted by the December weather event. The board would like to recognise the incredible efforts of residents, engineers, designers, planners, community delivery teams, council staff and Fulton Hogan for their hard work and perseverance during this time. With the roads reopening, contractors will now turn their focus to other, more minor repairs and tidying up sections of the roading network. Another wee project that's happening in a wonderful show of partnerships. The Banks Peninsula Conservation Trust, Refuge Ecology and Council Rangers are working together to help Aotearoa's smallest bird, the titi punamu, or rifleman. These tiny birds, a male weighs just 6 grams, are one of the only 2 species of wren left in New Zealand. The group efforts to install new nesting boxes that are designed to provide safe anti-predator nesting sites should help boost numbers in the area that lack mature trees. Members of the public are reporting sightings of titi punamu in Robinson's Bay Valley, Hinaway Reserve and LeBon's Bay, as well as other areas in the peninsula. We're hopeful that these efforts lead to more sightings and increased numbers of the wonderful species. Before I go back to the cruise ship, sorry, not the cruise ship, you can go back to Ekaroa Wharf, sorry. I'd like to bring up a current issue, sorry, lost me. Yesterday, Waka Kotahi announced the speed limit change for State Highway 75 and 74 within Littleton. Even though we as a board have not had a chance to discuss this, I feel as my role as chair, I advocate for our community. While the community are really disappointed by speed limits being dropped on the main state highway and not feeling heard during the consultation process, I am airing their frustration with this. On a more important note, and this is where I'm asking for council to assist advocating to Waka Kotahi, the approximate 1 kilometre stretch of road between Wairua Marae and Cooptown, that although the speed limit is being lowered to 80 kilometres an hour from 100, it does not make sense. This approximate 1 kilometre stretch of road sits between a 50 kilometre per hour speed limit that ends at Wairua Marae and a 60 kilometre per hour speed limit change that goes from Cooptown to Ekaroa. We've asked Waka Kotahi to look at the stretch of road in the past, and I feel it is not safe speed, especially when recently the local high school bus route has changed, forcing high school students to walk along this part of the road. There is also no footpaths. Please, can council help us in the community look at this?
Yeah, I heard the news on the radio. I think it was this morning, wasn't it? That it was public on the radio. And I thought, oh, great, they've extended it beyond Wairua. And then I thought, but I hadn't thought of Cooptown until you've raised it, and I'm glad that you have. So this is confession time. I was driving over to Akaroa, drove through Little River, go past Wairua, well, actually before then, you speed up, and I didn't notice the 60k, and I slowed down, but there was a member of the police force sitting on the other side of the road, but he was I think I must have been going over there for a purpose, because he basically was stopping people and taking a educative approach. So I didn't actually get a speeding ticket, but it was a salutary reminder that it's hard to juggle the things. And when you say 1 kilometre difference between 50k and 100 and then 60, it actually doesn't make sense. So, I mean, even if it were the 60 in that, so if it went from 50 to 60 and then at Cooptown, at the end of Cooptown, switch to the 100, then it would make sense. Yeah. All right. Well, I think we're there with you. So,
thank you.
Good luck, and we're hoping. Sorry.
Yep. So now talking about the Part A. So yes. Thank you to council staff to allow us to have extra time. Just regarding this Part A is a significant issue for the community. It's not an issue, but it's a well-loved facility. Yes, item. The board convened an additional meeting on the 4th of April to discuss the Ekaroa Wharf renewal and hear deputations from the community members and organisations regarding the design plan and concept. The board was pleased by the quality and quantity of submissions and strongly endorsed the continued consultation with stakeholders moving forward with the project. The board recognises the importance of the current wharf's heritage and character and the legacy of its location and use. The board thanks staff for continuing to work towards honouring these characteristics in its design considerations for working with the community to minimise disruption. On the disruption side of things, it was raised amongst a lot of deputations that the disruptions in and around the wharf will affect businesses. We have been reassured by staff that the best practical alternatives are being looked at and sorted. We look forward to seeing what these look like. It is really important to the community to have regular updates about the whole process and upcoming works happening. Being forewarned and updated regularly stops rumours and speculation, as this can happen so fast where there is limited information out there. Lastly, where the community and the community board ask the character and heritage values of the wharf are kept as true as they can be. Timber is an important feature that all would like to see integrated into the design, and we understand that when the concept design changes to detailed design, there will be a chance to see what that looks like. It was an interesting meeting, and the board feels it captured the feedback from the community well in our resolution.
Thank you very much. Do I have no, we're going to deal with that when we get to it.
Yep.
So thank you very much for your presentation today. It's much appreciated.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So that brings us to the end of the community boards, and I have the motion to receive the monthly report from the community boards, and that's council staff work with the Sumner Historical Society, Sumner Irish Day, and the Waikura Linwood Central Heathcote Community Board to install an appropriate replacement flagpole. Moved by Aaron, seconded by Mike. I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Right. Okay, so that's now we move on to the Akaroa Wharf renewal. We have who's we can take the report as read. Do councillors have any questions?
You're in camera.
No. Happy to move. Seconded by Andrew.
If you're happy for me to, I would like to. Thank you.
Okay, moved by Andrew Turner, seconded by Aaron Keown. Any discussion? Oh, yeah, Andrew.
Just briefly, I mean, this is the end of a long journey and a long set of conversations in Akaroa. I'd like to acknowledge the huge amount of work that staff have done with early engagement with stakeholders long before we got to preliminary designs and the more formal consultation that obviously led to the report that's in front of us today. This is a big project by anybody's standard, and there are a number of considerations that are actually quite difficult to balance. I mean, Akaroa is a town with a particular look and feel and particular heritage considerations, and the wharf, of course, is one of the most prominent features in Akaroa. So that there's a need to be looking at this from an amenity point of view, what it looks like, but at the same time, you know, if we're spending the huge amount that we're going to be spending on this, we need to make sure that it's got the functionality that's required as well. And of course, that functionality isn't just for the visitor businesses and the retail businesses that are on there. There are fishermen that need to unload on the wharf on Akaroa, in Akaroa. Access, of course, then becomes an issue. And as we move from the existing wharf to a new wharf, there are transitional arrangements need to be put in place so that all of those businesses continue to operate without interruption or inconvenience, particularly now that we're in a situation where we're very pleased to be able to welcome international visitors back in the near future. So very complex. And certainly there were some complexities came through in the submissions and responses to the consultation. I believe the community board has done a good job in balancing those, and I really just wanted to acknowledge the huge amount of work that staff have done, supporting the process to date and supporting the community board through its decision making as well. But yeah, I'm very happy with what we've got in front of us and look forward to continuing to work with staff and the community so that delivery is as seamless as it possibly can be.
I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That is carried. Thank you very much, and thank you to staff. The next one is the Wolston Community Centre former and the which is the gift of building and granting of ground lease to Te Waka Onua School. I take it as read. Is there anyone who wishes to move this? Jake, seconded by Sarah. Yanni's got his hand up. So do you want to ask questions?
No, sorry, I was just trying to move it. That's okay. I totally support this.
No. He's quite. Jake's quite happy for you to move it. We know that this is your area. So, so Yanni Johansson moved, and Jake McDonald, McClellan. I've just given you a new brother.
Just.
Yeah.
I just had one question.
One question from Yanni. Yep.
Yeah, it was just
Settle, Yanni.
Like really support this approach. For those of us who've had a lot to do with this building and this community association, we know that this makes a lot of sense. But it does kind of raise, I think, the bigger question, and I just wanted to check with staff around the ongoing relationship with the Ministry of Education around working together around schools, particularly like this that have merged and expanded. So have staff had any thought to how that ongoing relationship can be pursued?
I can answer that, thanks, Councillor Johansson. I have had initial meetings both with Gary Watson and with Ministry of Education staff in relation to further opportunities. I've been informed that if Ministry of Education owns the land and or buildings, then they're very comfortable taking the lead and working with council. But if council owns the land and or buildings, then they are not as engaging. However, we're willing to work through those opportunities further through extra engagement along the way.
Thank you. And I just wanted to speak to it at the due point.
Yep. No other questions? Yanni. Yanni.
Oh, thanks. I just quickly wanted just to acknowledge the community association. That this community centre has had a long history of community engagement and involvement in the local area, and there's been so many people that have, given their time, volunteered, worked to support the local Wolston community at this site. So, although I think the proposed approach does make sense with a school that can make good use of this space, it is also important to acknowledge and just thank all those people in the community previously that have given to the Wolston community at this particular location. So really happy to support what's been put in front of us today. It makes a lot of sense, and just with an acknowledgement of the hard work that has gone on previously by the local community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Melanie, did you want to?
I'm supportive of this. I think it's great, obviously, to support school students. The thing that bothered me about this was not this particular issue, but related, where we as council are often, doing some of the work for the Ministry of Education that maybe they sometimes should be doing for themselves, and not just about like buildings and things, but about road spaces where they build roads on the school on two sides of the road, and then suddenly council's got to come in and put in a set of lights. So I think it would be great if the Ministry of Education could work better with us. And we don't always fill the stopgap, but I'm totally supportive of this because it's good to use the space and for the students.
I'll put that motion. Oh, did you want to, Aaron?
I just want to agree with Melanie. It's a really good point she's raised, and it should kind of be a conversation between the Ministry of Ed and Waka Kotahi. So if the requirement's there, then they fund it, even though the council may deliver it. But they have a fund that when it's there, it's just done each time, and essentially it's a bit of paperwork between a couple of desks and everyone's happy. So I just wanted to back up that.
Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That is carried. Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We move to the first of the two slow speed neighbourhoods papers. The first one is Scarborough Hill. I take it as read. Is there a mover for this? Sarah Templeton, seconded by Phil Major. Are there any questions for staff? Is there any debate?
I have a question. Is that okay?
Oh, a question?
Yep, quick
Sorry.
question. Yep. Just hearing this morning from Eddington about the issues that they're having through there, and wondering about clarity about how come a neighbourhood gets the slow speed treatment when others obviously have similar issues. What is the process, and is it understood by community boards?
So I think through the last LTP process, it was decided to do 5 slow speed neighbourhood projects a year. Gemma's been working on those. This is Gemma Joni, one of our senior transport engineers. So Gemma's been working on these and prioritising them. This year we've probably done some of the easier ones just to keep the programme moving, but we have got a programme moving forward. Do you want to speak a bit more about the programme moving forward and whether Addington sits there on that programme?
Yeah, so we are still working through the prioritisation, but every now under the setting of speed limit rule change, which comes into effect on May the 19th, we can start lowering a lot more local streets. So we have packaged them up into neighbourhoods, and that's really just for delivering prioritisations based on safety, kind of what's already happening in the area, if people are already travelling at those speeds, and that's how we've looked at the kind of easier ones. But we are hoping to come around to the boards to kind of present the programme so that it's visible to everyone when their neighbourhoods will be delivered.
Thank you. It's excellent news, because I know our way in Horsewall there is concern also, and would love to discuss those options. Thank you.
I think that's the opportunity for us to build those neighbourhoods with the communities as well, because they'll obviously know areas that we won't be as familiar with, so we can include those areas and actually increase the scope of what we're doing.
It's great that local knowledge is really important, so thank you.
Right, so I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. As opposed say no. That is carried. Thank you very much. Slow speed neighbourhoods, Shirley. I think it's the same team. Would someone like to move that one? Pauline Cotter, seconded by Mike Davidson. Any questions? Any debate? I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That is carried.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's 10:56, and rather than start on the, well, no, it's risking it, 4 minutes. I will adjourn the meeting for the morning tea break, and we will reconvene at 11:15 a.m. on the dot to commence the Christchurch Wastewater Treatment Plant Recovery Update. Thank you very much. Everyone, we'll restart the meeting and hand over for an update on the Christchurch wastewater treatment plant recovery update.
Kia ora koutou, councillors. I've got the team here to give you the second of what is going to be fortnightly updates to this council and to the Finance and Performance Committee. And I just wanted to just absolutely clarify. So the report that you have in the agenda is a summary of what we presented 2 weeks ago. And the presentation will cover what has happened over the last 2 weeks. And that will be the pattern of reporting for the period that we'll be reporting fortnightly to you. And just to outline, what we're going to cover this morning, we will talk to you about the contract, which, as you know, was awarded yesterday. So we will talk you through what's happening with that contract, what was going to happen over the next 4 months, and also we'll talk to you about what activities have led up to that awarding of the contract since the time that the insurer gave us the nod to go ahead and remove the filter material. We'll give you an update on what's been happening with the wider plant. So Adam will talk to you again about what we're doing with the wider plant. And we'll update you on the environmental monitoring, particularly the odour monitoring and our partnership with other parties on that. We'll give you an update on community support in terms of the next steps and decision making there and what's happening with communication. So I will hand over to Michael now to talk you through the contract to remove the material.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. As you know, the letter of acceptance for the contract to remove the media from the trickling filters was sent to Southern Demolition and Salvage Limited yesterday morning, and the appointment was made public yesterday afternoon. Site establishment is underway. The first of the machinery started arriving on site this morning, so there's a lovely image up there of that was taken quite early this morning of an excavator on site. For the rest of the day, they'll obviously be delivering more plant or machinery to site. This will include over the next 4 weeks, compactors, chippers, the establishment of concrete pads to place those units on, and sheet piling, obviously. Media removal work is scheduled to start after Queen's birthday, so 6th of June. The methodology on how they're removing that media is they'll be constructing 2 stone ramps so the excavator can gain access to the top of the trickling filters to start removing that media. Once they've excavated a sizable enough patch, a smaller digger excavator will be lowered in, and it will continue moving media to the larger excavator so it can be taken out of the trickling filters. So the completion of the media removal, so that's not completion of the contract, but completion of the media removal will be completed early spring. So within the first week of September. Next slide, please. So in terms of what's happened over the last, 6.5 weeks from when our insurer first notified us that we could commence or start to remove that media, there has been a lot of work happen over that last 6.5 weeks. From the public's point of view, it may look like it was moving slowly, but there has been a hell of a lot of work done. So the first thing that was done was our procurement options were thoroughly investigated and confirmed, so we had to make sure our procurement methodology was in line with the Council's procurement policy, and also that we matched the best guidance notes from Office of the Auditor General. We met with the contractor initially to talk through what we were planning to have done. Contractor then went out and organised labour resources and secure supply lines, and also undertook discussions with Cape Valley for the disposal of the filter media because it is classed as a hazardous substance. Contract documentation was being prepared by council staff while the contractor was securing subbies and those supply lines. Presentation was then given to the Finance and Performance Committee. Contractor's proposal was received by council staff. Contract terms and conditions were then finalised with the contractor, and the insurance subcommittee were provided with a briefing following that. And then obviously the last step was the letter of issue of award was sent out yesterday morning. I'll now ask Adam to come forward and give you an update on the interim operational procedures of the plant.
Good morning. Just to give you an update on what we have done over the previous 2 weeks operationally on the wastewater treatment plant. The first image you'll see in front of you is the 2 temporary aeration tanks. Both of these tanks have been fully online for the past 2 weeks, treating the sewage that's been passing through them. Prior to this, the tanks were offline, with just the aerators being operated to test them during commissioning. Also indicated with that image, we've made minor operational tweaks. So at the bottom, you'll see some strapping lines. These are to hold the arms which previously rotated, to hold them into position, because we found they were vibrating an awful lot and we don't want to damage them. And in the centre, we've taken some of the mechanical parts apart, which are not going to be used while the system's in place, so we can take it, service it, and store it, ready for it to be returned to service when the system's finally decommissioned. This image shows the other ongoing work that's happening on these temporary aeration tanks. In the bottom, you can see all the electrical conduits for all the electrical wiring for these aerators going in. On the right hand side, apologies, the image isn't quite as good as what I hope it is one of the transformers. That's the little grey box, and the top arrow is the control cabinets for all the controls that are going in there. Moving on to the oxidation ponds, this image shows the 2 additional surface aerators which are being installed. As you can see, it's not just as easy as just putting a surface aerator in. We've got to make sure the surface aerator's in, it's in the right place, it's anchored, it's not going to try and drive itself away, and it's got the electrical controls connected all in place. So they are now both in and operational on oxidation pond 1. The first surface aerator that we put in on oxidation pond 1, this was just further down to the south, that has been requested to be returned to the organisation that's lent it to us. So that is isolated and that has now been taken out. Will obviously be cleaned before being returned to them. It is not perceived for the loss of this aerator to have any significant impact, given that the other 2 aerators have gone in. As you're aware, we are putting in a trickling filter bypass pipe. This photograph on the right shows the trench that's gone through. The yellow arrow at the top indicates where we temporarily have to keep the trench covered to put some heavy steel plates in. This isn't to enable us to carry on with the normal operation and maintenance of the grit removal system. So we've had some excellent cooperation with the contractor to make sure other normal site operations can continue whilst we put this great big trench all the way through. The white arrows in the foreground show the existing underground services that the contractor's having to work around, so you can see fairly significant pipes and conduits go through, and there's also the site's 11,000 kVA ring main which also runs through this area, so I can confirm that has been isolated as of this morning. When you are trying to build the second largest wastewater treatment system in New Zealand, it doesn't come with a nice operation and maintenance manual. So what my site staff have been busy in doing in the background is to prepare all the associated documentation, health and safety protocols for how to operate this system when it's in. So this is just an example of that. So on the right hand side, you can see the standard operating procedure for the daily checklist for the site. So that documents all the process and procedures, the health and safety requirements. And on the left is the appendix to that, which is the daily check sheet which the operators work around. So as you can see, this is already in and we're working through it on a daily basis, and you can see the number of amendments and notes which has been made on those, which will then be incorporated into the main document to make it fit for purpose and continue to keep the site as performing as well as possible. We've also taken the steps of establishing an operational laboratory for the site staff. So the Christchurch Wastewater Treatment Plant already has a fully accredited IENS laboratory. However, that focuses on 3 areas: water, wastewater and stormwater and other environmental monitoring. As a consequence of that, when we send the samples into the lab, the response time from the lab is anything from 1 day for a simple pH test to 5 days for where they have to do some analysis on the sludge. What this little setup will do is enables my site operational staff to grab some samples and do instant analysis on it, get the results back within 15 minutes, a couple of hours if they have to dry a sample out, and then they can go straight back out and grab some more samples or make some operational changes straight away. On the left-hand side is a list of all the equipment that's been purchased that the staff are rapidly making themselves familiar with to make sure they can all use it and understand it in a consistent manner. I appreciate it looks a bit piecemeal on the right-hand side. We're just waiting for the bench to be installed into it, so the site staff are operating it in a nice, safe environment. To ensure the reliability of this new system, we will be working the system hard and it will be working at full capacity. The amount of redundancy and resilience in this new system, there's not a lot of. To ensure we can operate it as reliably as possible, what we've done is we've fast-tracked the replacement of the site's telehandler. This was always scheduled to be replaced anyway. All I'm doing is bringing it forward because it's had a bit of a history of unreliability. Prior to this, it didn't matter if it broke down for a couple of days. However, in this, we need to be able to get in and lift those surface aerators out and get it replaced as quickly as possible within a matter of hours.
I'm breaking the rule, but dumb question. Explain what the telehandler is and what it does.
Sorry. So on the left-hand side is a great big crane. This was used to put the 8 aerators in. So to get a crane to site takes a couple of days. On the right-hand side is the telehandler. Is it possible to move the remove the people? Yeah. So what the telehandler is, it's a unit with a great big telescopic arm that can reach up to 20 metres, and it can get right up against the tank edge, so we can get across, lift the aerators, and move it across.
Spoiler alert, though, it looks exactly as you'd imagine it.
You can switch your cameras back on. Sorry. It didn't help.
So it's just a small bit of plant. It's got a telescopic arm on it, so we can drive it right up to the tank edge, extend the boom, hook it onto the surface aerator, lift it out, put it down, and drop the critical spare one in straight away. So downtime is a matter of hours as opposed to 2 or 3 days for the crane. So it's just to make sure we are running this system as quickly and effectively and efficient as possible.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Adam. So the next slide is on our air quality monitoring. Nigel.
Hi, thanks very much for the opportunity to present. My name's Nigel Grant. So the air quality monitoring, we've trained up monitoring staff to do the work, and we've had one round of monitoring that was done by a company. We've now got our staff trained up to do that, and we've got that scheduled. We'll be doing that weekly from now on. The first sampling is happening today. In the weeks moving forward, we'll have more of an eye. We'll just be watching more closely on weather conditions, and perhaps also working with ECAN to see when there's been if there's spikes in smell complaints. So we'll be a bit more flexible about the times that we monitor. The turnaround is expected to be quick, so we should have the results for this week back by Monday night, I'm hoping, and obviously we'll communicate those out. So, thanks. We're also setting up regular and scheduled meetings with Environment Canterbury and Community and Public Health to ensure that we've got good cross-agency collaboration on public health and environmental issues. We've had one of those. It's a bit tricky to pull a number of people together, but as well as that, already offline, I've been talking to Medical Officer of Health from Community and Public Health and getting a good line of communication going. They're obviously interested in us providing them the results from the air sampling that we're getting, so that they can also have their own specialist advice that they have access to. So that's valuable for us. And in addition to that, we also have engaged with an external specialist to, once again, when we start feeding those results into them, they'll be able to provide further assessment and advice on those monitoring results, and obviously working closely with Adam's guys who are doing monitoring also and running the plant. So that's pretty much for me.
Thanks, Nigel. So we've got Adrian online to talk about the insurance cover.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Just a brief update really on what insurance cover we have over the plant and what we, at the time of the fire and going forward. So the key thing is the plant was fully insured under our above ground asset policy at the time of the fire. It's still fully insured. We have our insurance renewal due on 30th of June, and we've had no indications from insurers that there will be any issues renewing that cover. Our policy allows or covers two different portions. One is called material damage, which is the physical damage suffered in a fire or an earthquake, a flood, whatever. Can you just skip back to the previous slide, please? And under that cover, the trickling filters insured value is approximately 90 million, and that was based on a reinstatement cost and evaluation in June 2021. The second part of the policy is what's known as business interruption, and that is for increased costs of maintaining normal operations once you've had an event like the fire. And then there's also 5 million worth of cover under that business interruption as well for assessing and preparing the claims. So total insurance available for this particular event is 105 million. You'll all be well aware that we received a $10 million initial payment in late November from the insurer. That was not tagged as being material damage or business interruption. It was simply an interim payment. Internally, we have chosen to classify it as increased costs because that's where the bulk of the spend has been so far in transforming the plant to run in the new system that Adam's been outlining to you. The material damage portion of the cover also covers the costs of the filter media removal and all the engineering fees to assess the damage and establish what to do to rectify it and what it might cost. Next slide, please, Jane, if you're driving. So the key here is the material damage section of the policy entitles us to receive the cost of reinstatement of the asset. So there's two different definitions of reinstatement depending on whether the asset is destroyed or not. So if it's destroyed, then reinstatement is a replacement with an equivalent building or plant using current technology. If it's repairable, then it's the restoration of the damaged part of the asset to a condition substantially the same as we knew, including any alterations or further work needed to comply with any laws. So that's things where, like the building code changes, or if we had to do anything to comply with changed environmental laws from the time that the original was put in. The business interruption section of the policy covers any cost that we've incurred resuming or maintaining any normal service or operation, is the wording in the policy. So that covers the transformation work Adam and his team have done out at the plant, as well as costs of things like the increased chemical dosing that was put in starting the day after the fire and still continuing, so that will be included under that cover. Just checking notes here, sorry. And that, yeah, that's basically it from an insurance point of view. I'll be staying online for any questions at the end of the presentation.
Thanks, Adrian.
So consultant was appointed in April to undertake future process options analysis for the capacity recovery of the trickling filters. This report is due in November. The package of work has been broken up into 4 separate sections. So the consultant has been asked to look at firstly to establish a baseline or capacity baseline, what the plant was capable of treating prior to the fire event. The second package is looking at what options are available to replace the trickling capacity of the trickling filters. So they're looking at worldwide for those options. Obviously looking at new technology. Trickling filters are 50 years old from when they were first established here. So new technology has likely moved on, and there could be more efficient and cheaper options than the trickling filters, so they're looking into that. A third package in that is also investigations into which of those options would provide best bang for buck in terms of greenhouse gas emissions or reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. And then finally, they'll be ensuring any of those options will be able to cope with any future increases in treatment capacity that's required through population growth and business growth. We'll also be asking our consultants to investigate the likely standards or changes in standards that could come arise in the future for discharging to our water bodies, recognising that in the future we may not be able to discharge wastewater into the ocean.
Thanks, Michael. Katie, sorry. Gary will now just give you
Good morning, everybody. So just a quick community support update. So council has been invited to the public meeting tomorrow at Bromley. The Mayor, Councillor Cotter and staff will be there. Plus myself.
And Councillor Johansson.
Oh, Councillor Johansson, sorry. A bit hard of hearing today, sorry. And at that point, it is a community-led meeting. I'm expecting to hear straight from the community some of the needs that may appear there. We have some wellbeing workshops run by an independent health provider on those 2 dates. Being held at the Aranui Wainoni Community Centre. The centre itself allows for some breakout space should there be a need for that on the night. We're working with partners to have a look at the support options, which I'll bring to you at a briefing on Tuesday around community supports out there that we can fund.
Thanks, Gary. Now, Katie will talk to you just about what we're doing with communications and what we've been doing over the last couple of weeks and what's coming up.
Kia ora koutou. So acknowledging that we needed to do more communications earlier on in this process. In the last 2 weeks, you can see up there the list of what we have been up to, but of course always our focus is on where to from here. I really appreciated hearing from Don Gould this morning, and it was also encouraging to hear that the affected community are finding some of the communications that we're putting out to be helpful. So coming up, we have a webinar. We're confirming the exact date of that, likely to be the week commencing 23rd of May. We've got a combined community board presentation that will be available for people to view, and we are working on that video walkthrough of the plant. And we, of course, have regular e-newsletter and updates on the website. As mentioned, we'll be going to the meeting tomorrow night.
Thanks, Katie. And in addition to that, we've got the weekly e-newsletter updates, and we are also investigating options for future community meetings, and that will be informed by tomorrow night's meeting. So just to round off, we've now set up a ongoing reporting regime to elected members. So all these, or most of these, will be in public. As I said at the beginning, there are fortnightly briefings to the council and finance performance, and that will be just giving you a general update on the activities that we've done the previous 2 weeks. We are now going to be doing monthly reporting to the Insurance Subcommittee, and the Insurance Subcommittee will be receiving any information related to insurance, but they will also be monitoring the progress of the contract to remove the filter material. So we'll be reporting monthly to that committee on the progress with that contract to ensure that they meet the contractors meet the date that they've given us. We'll also be reporting to the Health and Safety Committee and the Audit and Risk Committee on health and safety and risk matters as those meetings come up, or we will have special meetings or extraordinary meetings if they're required, depending on how we're going. And we'll continue to report to the Three Waters and Environment Committee as it sits as well on the general operations of the wastewater treatment plant alongside the other 2 waters. So that's our presentation. Yep. Oh, there you go. So that's the that yellow bit of machinery with wheels. So the team's here to answer any questions.
Thanks very much. Just on the independent health provider community meetings, we've had some expression this morning that perhaps one of those meetings could be held in the Bromley Community Centre, or if not, an additional one to be added to the list.
I can definitely look at all of that. The reason on that facility was the space and other rooms to be able to use under stressful workshops. Those things happen, but can definitely have a look at one for Bromley if that's required. It's been really hard to find providers because of the COVID situation. Everyone's really overrun with this stuff, but yep, we can definitely look at that.
That's great, thank you. Yanni.
Thank you for the update. I just had a few questions. First off, just to start with the external contact with ECAN CDHB and the Medical Officer of Health. I was also interested to know if we've talked to NIWA or the Environmental Protection Agency, and whether there's any tangible help or concerns that they've raised and an action plan. Because I got the response back to the question around what the agreed actions were, and all it says is that we're just going to continue meeting. But what I really want to understand is, what are the concerns that they're raising? How are those concerns going to be addressed? And how at a governance and a community level do we have visibility?
Yeah, we haven't had, as far as I'm aware, we haven't had contact with the likes of NIWA, but yeah, just working with particularly the Medical Officer of Health, their concerns are obviously on 2 levels. One is around the toxicity issues, and the other one is being addressed is just around the welfare and the anxiety that people experience, and the testing, the very limited testing we've done so far indicates that the bigger issues is probably around the anxiety issues rather than the
Stress,
potential toxicity.
Distress, I think, is a better word than anxiety. It's just stress.
Yeah. Stress,
It's
okay. Sorry.
a stressed community.
Okay,
Distressed
yeah.
community.
I went to say that for a start. Yeah. Okay, so, yeah, Yanni, too, I can't offer much more than that at the moment. That's why I've got involved. We'll keep up very regular contact now with the Medical Officer of Health and with ECAN, and I think we can rely on ECAN to give us more advice around the atmospheric and weather conditions as well, and try and pull all that together. And then we'll end up working closely with Katie and Gary, around how we feed that information in and take account of people's stress.
Thanks, Nigel. I mean, and thank you for the presentation and your role, because I mean, I think you'll recall after the earthquake, we had what I thought was quite a good natural environment recovery program, where we had really clear roles and responsibilities, clear actions, timeframes to address the issues that had come up, and we worked collaboratively across organisations. So having that level of understanding with some sort of plan or program, I think is very useful, because certainly what I've seen in the media in the last few days or the last few weeks, there's been a number of people commenting from CDHB, NIWA, raising concerns. And what I don't see is what the join-up approach is from us working with them.
Could we ask staff to report at the next one with a very, very specific set of actions arising out of the work program? I think the DHB is different from ECAN. ECAN is the regulator, and they have legal responsibilities as well as the collaborative responsibilities that they engage with us on. But I agree with Yanni. I think it's really important that we have a front-facing view of the of what should be a very strong working relationship with the DHB, with agreed actions and how they are tracking. Yeah, that would be good. It doesn't not requiring an answer right now.
The other concern that people have raised to me is in terms of our odour air quality monitoring and sampling is how far is that going in and measuring it at a community residential level rather than just at the wastewater treatment site? Do you have a map of where the sites that we're monitoring air quality is or are?
At the moment, we didn't put a map up for this presentation, but obviously there is one, but it's very much around just the perimeter of the testing of the treatment plant at the moment, and it's going out just on the edges of the residential area. But as time goes on and we discuss that, we'll be discussing that with particularly public health and also ECAN, and trying to pull that the smell it data together, where I'm sure we'll also extend further out. Having said that, going back to the question around toxicity, the two, as we heard Don talk about this morning, the two substances which are probably responsible for a lot of the odour is hydrogen sulfide, but also that methyl mercaptan, which is a smell. It's had a very low level of that it can be detected at, and that's why they measure it, in parts per billion, which is like one drop in a swimming pool type stuff. But it can be detected, so we will be going out. We probably will go further out and do monitoring, but it's probably going to show its presence rather than a risk to people's health from a toxicity issue. It's more come back to that stress risk. But yeah, certainly we'll have to develop that. We'll be developing that, and happy obviously to report back later.
Thank you. Just three more questions from me. Thank you for giving us a brief overview of the methodology of the contract that's being let. I note that the contractor is working 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. What would it take to get into work 24/7? And just keen to know how it could be done quicker, if there was any resource that would enable it to be done 7 days a week or longer hours in the day.
We've got Kurt from Health and Safety to respond to that.
The work that the contractors are going to be undertaking is extremely dangerous, and there is a lot of risk with that. Running those contractors 24/7 overnight would present a significant risk. We also have to recognise that this is an operational plant which is critical to our city's infrastructure. There are definitely labour shortages out there. The work that is undertaken is highly skilled. We would need to be very careful on any downwards pressure. This council has overlapping duties. This is our plant, this is our site and our structures. We have responsibilities under the Act to make sure that this work is done safely.
So that's the safety issue. No, but but Kurt's not going to answer the contracting issue.
So in addition to that, we the contractor will have resourcing challenges. So the contractor has been instructed to come back to us with a methodology to clean out the filter material as quickly as possible, and that's why we got from 7 months down to 4 months. His methodology, I'm not sure if there's anybody here that can make a comment, but the methodology in our professional view, not my view, the engineers, is that the methodology is actually delivering as quickly as possible. Notwithstanding 24 hours a day would speed it up, but we have significant safety concerns, as you've heard from Kurt. But the contractor also has resourcing issues and challenges, and there's a lot of construction work going on at the moment. There is not a lot of equipment and people available at the moment for the contractor to bring in. So the contractor has brought in subcontractors. Do you want to add a little bit to that, Michael? We've pushed quite hard in terms of negotiating the contract in the first place, and
there's logistical constraints as well. So if the contractor is working 24/7, Cape Valley is only open from 7 till 3, Monday to Friday. If they are pulling out that media, chipping it, compacting it, they would need to store that media on site. It's a hazardous substance, so it'll be in sealed containers. The contractor is advised that if 24/7 work was to commence, they would not have access to the containers to store that product. So in other words, they are working as quickly as they can in terms of the constraint to actually dispose of the material.
But they're continuing to push for that, so that because I mean, obviously these questions were asked the other day, and the option of the Sunday, the 7 days a week, but they're still looking at what can be achieved.
Yes, the contractor is advised that they have a day and several more hours up their sleeve. If they find they're falling behind target, they can, for short periods of time, increase their working to 7 days a week and 15-hour days, but that's not sustainable. They can't do that week on, week out.
Yanni, I'm just going to let Sam ask a question because it's associated.
Yeah, it's probably more just following on from our insurance conversation the other day. Just for context, Yanni, we drilled into this for about an hour, and one of the risks was if, besides the logistical stuff around the 24/7, if someone, unfortunately was killed out at site, we would have further delays than what we're already getting. So it's likely we'd shut the site for a couple of weeks. So, and it would be awful for the
impact
person.
On the
and the family.
Well, that's why I said it would be unfortunate, but there would also be another delay. So we did test that all out.
But we did go through this in detail, but we haven't had an opportunity to report back. We literally met just last week, and
Monday.
Yeah, and so we're this is the soonest, most up-to-date information that we've got. All right.
So, So the idea of having some sort of alliance and having more than one contractor, that wouldn't have helped, given that I think we had 3 contractors that we were initially talking to.
So from a procurement process, we have opted for a single and a direct appointment. If we were to look at alternative contractors, that is an open procurement process and would have slowed us down. There's also some safety issues with more than one contractor operating at what is quite a confined space that they will be working in. So from a safety point of view, we would not be promoting or supporting that from an officer point of view, but there was also a procurement issue around that. But as I said, the contractor has looked for subcontractors and has secured subcontractors and has secured as much resource as he can.
Right. My next question was just around understanding that if this was trialled in December 2021, and I've gone back and looked at the memo that we received just before the end of last year, where there was a lot of discussion around the oxidation ponds and the aerators as being a potential mitigation to the odour, but the trickling filter media, although it was identified that the trickling filters weren't working at capacity, obviously not working at all, there wasn't much discussion around that. But given that we did the trial and it was successful, why did we not procure a contract then to remove it? And when did we first know that the trickling filter material would be a serious source of odour?
So just in terms of the timing, so we couldn't secure a contractor until we had the insurer confirm that they were happy that we removed the material. So that was the start of the process to procure the contractor for this work. The concentration and focus on the rest of the plant was around making sure that we had an operational plant, and that was the focus of the project team's work, because that was actually the immediate need to get the balance of the wastewater treatment plant changed so we could continue to operate that plant.
So when did we first ask our insurer if we could remove the media from the trickling filters, and when did they give us permission?
Adrian, do you want to respond to that one?
Yeah, I was just finding my mute button, sorry. We've been talking to them all the way through the process, not just around the filter media removal, but around what damage assessments and investigations were needed. And the last of the concrete samples, which was the last of the key information, they were removed on the 21st of March, and we had the approval on the 25th. We've had to work with them and their engineers and ours to agree a scope of works effectively for what investigations were needed, then work that into all the logistics around getting people from all around the country on site, getting cranes and man cages to get them up there to look at that sort of thing. Also protecting our position and our insurer's position with respect to other parties' involvement, which I can't say a lot on in public, but we've been going as quick as humanly possible on it.
So,
Sorry,
Yanni,
I just want to be clear
I've
though.
put this page back up, Yanni, just to remind you that the first step in a process like this is the procurement process. You have to hire somebody to do the job, and the delegated procedure that we have in place in a matter of urgency like this led to the decision. The approval from insurers was on a Friday, I believe. And it was like a week later that ELT signed off on a direct procurement subject to some additional questioning, and then a final sign-off on the 11th of April. And that way we've avoided the whole time frame that would have been involved in going out to tender. So there are always risks, but we have to follow the Office of the Auditor General best practice guidance. And that was the consideration that the executive team took into account. So perhaps you could direct your question to something that we haven't covered.
Yeah. So what I didn't get clear on is, when did we suspect that the trickling filter media was going to be a serious source of odour problem?
It was defined as March in the last documentation that we had, the last briefing, because it was after the first of the heavy rains, and then the drying, because it's the drying immediately following heavy rain, it's hot days, that causes the rotting to occur. So, I mean, we've been briefed on this. We publicly briefed on it 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
So if
just
Aaron.
the final question was just around a state of emergency or any sort of crisis declaration. Is there any benefit to overcoming some of the challenges with capacity, resource, dealing with this massive issue if we considered a state of emergency or any sort of declaration?
As the chair of the Joint Committee on Civil Defence and Emergency Management, I can tell you that answer in one word, and that is no. Aaron.
Yeah, and thank you for putting that journey back up. The approval from insurers was on the 25th of March. Why was the it's because people in public will ask this. Why was the conversation not made with the contractors prior to that? So once approval was given, they would have been rolling in somewhere in before the end of March. in starting work. Like when you go to do your own development, you're going to the bank. You know you're not getting the thing from the bank, but you've lined up all the ducks prior to that.
I don't know, Adrian, if you want to make a comment here, but
Sorry, I was just distracted by kids running in and out of the room. Could you just repeat the question?
Same, Adrian.
It's not really an insurance question, but could staff have gone and talked to contractors before they'd made a decision to directly engage?
Well, the conversation with insurance had been going on for quite some time, and a lot of work was being done, but why were the contractors not lined up to start as soon as approval was given? So you have approval, then you bring in the contractors.
No, because a decision has to be made as to what procurement model will be adopted. And the organisation couldn't really make a decision or a call on the procurement model until they had the go-ahead from the insurer. Or are you suggest? Well, maybe that's the question.
So we need.
Could staff have considered the procurement model earlier?
Only theoretically. We needed to know what we were procuring before we actually went out and started considering a procurement process and talking to contractors. So we had to be very careful ahead of making a procurement decision not to talk to one contractor because that decision hadn't been made. But we didn't even know what we were procuring. So just to remind everyone, this was an event that has got no precedent that we could have learnt from. So we have been learning as we go. So with the benefit of hindsight, and we will do a look back, there could have been decisions that we made differently. But remember, we weren't making decisions on any past experience.
But my question is around, because the bit that the public really care about is the smell and the removal of the material. How long the rebuild part takes and who pays for what and how it's done isn't such a big deal because they know it will be done and done well. But it's that interim smell part. That was, the expectation was that was always going to be removed no matter what replaced it or was going to be repaired or be done. So why was that part, the removal of that, not set up earlier? So on the, let's even be generous, the 27th of March, they could have started rolling in and we had the photo op and we're into it.
Our initial concerns were the odours coming from the ponds, and it wasn't till later that we became aware that the odours from the trickling filters were causing an issue, became an issue. So most of staff's time and efforts were going into making sure we could get the ponds in order and eliminate the smell from there. So by the time the trickling odours from the trickling filters, or we became aware of the odour from the trickling filters, matches more or less up with when the insurers said we could then start removing that media. So prior to that, removing the media isn't as big a rush.
Could be true, but there was a number of, because I grew up very close to there, and prior to the lids being on years ago and stuff, we used to smell the sewer farms all the time, and my uncle lived right next to Cal Stadium, and so that was a different smell. So locals knew the smell; they know the sewer farm smell, and that wasn't what they were picking up. So alarm bells must have been going off earlier.
So can I just get Elizabeth just to give you a bit of advice as well?
It's just as a practical matter, and Jane already alluded to it. If we had gone out and because we needed the right contractor to do the job. The reason you do a direct appointment is in cases of emergency and so on. But you also need to know that you are going to the right person to do the job for you. Otherwise, you do go through that procurement process. Until we knew exactly what we needed to be done, we didn't, it's hard to preempt who you need to do the job until you know what the job is. And yes, there are lots of contractors out there who could do it, but once we'd fully ascertained what it was that we were looking at and what we needed to do, it made sense to go out then. Sometimes if you more haste, less speed. Sometimes if you make decisions without exactly knowing what it is you're going out for, what is your scope, what is all the rest of it, you don't know if you've got the right fit until you know what you need.
Question. I also want you, perhaps while you're at the table, and I'm going to get Adam to come back because I think that from a technical point of view, he might be in a position to respond to that. But Elizabeth, do you want to just respond to the obligations that we have to the insurer, not to undermine any claims that they might have?
A lot of us have dealt with insurance, you know, in
Christchurch we know insurance well.
You have noted that. So as an organisation, it's not just our obligations to the insurer, it's our obligations to the ratepayer to make sure that we handle this insurance policy properly. If it's not handled properly, that can potentially have a significant impact on the ratepayers.
Or the insurer could actually void the contract if we do anything that undermines their position.
And thank you. That's
the
that is the gist of
reality. And people, I think, know that because that's their own personal experience.
Yeah, and if we step out of we have an excellent relationship with the insurer, and if we had stepped out of that, and if we had done anything without full discussions with them and approval from them, we potentially will always run the risk of jeopardising some or all of whatever settlement or payment could be made.
So then we must have had because we always knew the media had to come out, that stuff had to come out at some point anyway. Did we, and I totally respect that those negotiations were going on, and it's great that they, with the insurance, that no breaches were made, so we will get our proper insurance. But we must have had the opportunity to ask the insurance companies for permission, and all three of them, whoever's reinsuring whoever else, to say, hey, look, we've got a real stench problem in this area. Can we have permission to get that part sorted earlier prior to the other stuff being done?
So just saying again, it wasn't till March that we realised that the stench from the trickling filters was a problem. So we were dealing with the smell from the rest of the plant and the ponds. It was March when we had the weather conditions that then generated those really intense stench issues. So up till then, we weren't aware that that was going to happen. So there wasn't a lot of time between those weather conditions giving rise to that stench and the insurer approving the works.
So were we not receiving reports earlier? I thought I'd smelt it through the Christmas break.
You would have smelt
that. That was the point that was made at the public briefing, and Helen Beaumont went out to the community and did a briefing explaining what we were going to do in relation to the ponds. So, and it was the aerators and turning whatever it was, those other bits into aerating ponds. So, Helen, do you want to just update on that?
One of the things with fortnightly briefings is that we tend to talk to you about what's happened in the last 2 weeks and what's happening in the next 2 weeks, and we forget that it's been several weeks since the fire. Now, immediately after the fire, the smell was the burnt plastic media, and that was pretty gross across the whole city. And the fire knocked out some of our air handling systems, so we were also getting a lot of odours from the primary treatment part of the plant. So where we screen the wastewater, where our primary sedimentation tanks are, was without any air handling at all. So it took us 3 weeks to get a temporary air handling system online there. So we had multiple sources of odour from right across the plant. The other thing that happened in those few weeks after the fire and through the warmest period of the summer is that the fire itself took all of the oxygen out of that wastewater stream, and it destroyed the media, the biological media, and the treatment process in those secondary contact tanks. So we got a lot of odours from that area as well. That has, over the past few weeks, come all the way back to ordinary operation, and we're not getting odours from those anymore. But I think the thing is that over the weeks we've had multiple sources of odour, and the dominant odour has shifted from one part of the plant to another. So we've been playing chase, if you like, trying to get rid of the worst ones as soon as possible, and we're doing that. And now, where we're playing chase is the trickling filters, but we have already eliminated odours from other parts or minimised them. So there's a lot of work that's happened and a lot of odour sources that we've got on top of, and now we're dealing with the ponds, by continuing to improve the process and the trickling filters by getting rid of that media. So it's just a little potted history because we tend to forget what's happened several weeks ago.
So just to be really clear, because we're all aware that there's a lot of constraints around infrastructure build and stuff at the moment and getting contractors of any sort. When we started our insurance discussions and lodged our insurance claim, did we also start our procurement process at that point, knowing it would be longer than normal?
We lodged our insurance claim on the 2nd of November last year.
Yep.
So no, we didn't.
Yeah, to get the stuff out, because at that point it was
We
the
didn't
bad
know
burning
that
plastic.
there was a problem with the media smell
Yeah.
as above all of the other smells that were going on at the same time. I think that's what...
Yeah, so what
Helen-
we've been doing, we've been dealing with the priorities. So that wasn't a priority at that time. So no, we did not begin that work.
I think what he's saying though, aren't you, is on the day we applied for permission for the insurer to remove the media, did we also start the procurement work? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely.
Oh, so you're not talking about the day we filed the claim?
No.
No. Well, we
Did we seek
started to
permission?
investigate the procurement options at that point. So the question that you're asking is, could the organisation, and is it a lesson learned that we should have started that process earlier? And that's something that we should take on notice and come back. Could we have started earlier on the procurement process? Could the organisation have made the determination to go to a single procurement earlier? That's the question, because otherwise it would have been an open tender or a closed tender amongst a limited group. So, yeah. Well, no. Let's take it offline. We're not going to ask and answer the question here. We're going to ask the question here. We're not going to answer it here. So that is the question: is that a lesson learned that we could have started the procurement process earlier by making the decision to go with a single contractor earlier? Because we certainly couldn't have gone to public tender any earlier than the agreement from the insurance company to allow the removal, regardless of whether it was a reinstatement or a rebuild, because it's that question still sits as an unanswered question. We don't know if the outward structure is sufficiently damaged to require a rebuild or whether it's repairable. Yep. All right. Adam, did you want to come back and add to anything there? Oh, you were there.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry. The only thing I wanted to add is obviously when the fire took out the trickling filters on the 1st of November, it took out a significant treatment process. The site was always going to smell after that, regardless of where it came from. We lost a significant treatment process. So whether that unit smell or the units down south smell, we're always going to be trying to chasing it to find out where it is. At the time, for the first 2.5 months, the trickling filters didn't smell because they weren't getting wet. We didn't know how far the fire went down into the media and what was left.
Yeah. So, it took 3 weeks to put the fire out, I think.
Correct.
So, yeah. This will all be documented. We will do a lessons learned review. We always do after events such as this. And one of the lessons learned has been the need for external communications right from the get-go. We did that really well. Omicron intervened, and I think we didn't do as well as we could have, and that's a big lesson learned. But very much focused now on outward-facing communications. All right, questions. I've got Jake and then Phil.
So just clarifying, when we realised that the really bad source of the odour was the media, and that was March, and it was within a month that we got the go-ahead to proceed to remove that media, and given that the media obviously smelled incredibly bad immediately after the fire, was it assumed that that smell would simply go away, or...
So
I don't know why we wouldn't seek to, yes, do the ponds, but also to address the media and seek approval as quickly as possible to remove the media as well, even if it wasn't the predominant source of odour?
So the initial smell after the fire from the trickling filters was the burnt plastic media smell, which then dissipated over time, and then with it being dry, it didn't smell for a couple of months.
Right. So it's a different odour from the same source, essentially.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Phil.
Thank you. Adam, I'm going to bounce around a whole lot of questions here. And to Jane, did we actually ask the insurance company if our claim would be compromised if we went earlier?
Adrian, it's probably a question for you.
To say, if you touch this, all bets are off. Is that did they hold us to ransom? Is what I'm sort of trying to say.
Short answer is no. They've been quite receptive going from the start on requests from us. In terms of, as the Mayor just pointed out, we're not sure on the status of the concrete tanks. That was the biggest question all along. So they've been okay with us doing various things on and around the site on the understanding that we avoid wherever possible having an impact on the tanks. And the whole testing regime has been done in accordance with them and to meet both sides of needs and take into account the fact that that's the key question we need answered.
So what I'm getting at is, if and correct me if I'm wrong, we haven't actually decided that the tank's going to be demolished yet. We don't know that yet, do we?
No.
We're not at that point.
No.
That's right.
So whether the tanks are demolished or not, the media had to come out separately, in my view. You could have pulled the side down, but you don't need to contaminate all the media with concrete, because the weight of the concrete, it would be a nightmare to try and do it like that. So I feel the way, from the 25th of March on, everything's gone along like a freight train. It's been absolutely good. And before then, we were doing a lot of work on the aerators, and I commend you guys for that. It's fantastic, because that's what we're good at, looking after the smell from sewage. But I don't think that we put enough thought or looked in our rear mirror to see this quietly building smell coming up behind us that has now slapped us in the back of the head. But anyway.
So can I just be really clear? We didn't know that the tanks were intact. And so we didn't know, and we still don't, but we certainly didn't have any results from any of the testing of the concrete to indicate whether they were intact or not. So I don't think it's correct to say that we've always known that we were going to take the media out separately and weren't going to demolish the tanks.
Okay, righto, I'll move on to another question. But just with, you talked about some sheet piling, and is that to contain the gravel that's going in to make the ramp, I assume?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, yeah, cool. Have and you won't be able to tell me this either, have we got a fixed price off the contract, or is it open-ended?
I don't know whether that's an appropriate public conversation for us to be having at the moment, but I don't know.
No, so we haven't absolutely finalised the contract, the details of the all the details of the contract. So at this point, we won't be disclosing that information.
Fair enough. No, that's fine. Okay. Yep. No, that's fine. Thank you very much.
Right. Jimmy Chen.
Two questions. Thank you for your presentation. One of the slides you mentioned the work delivery in 4 packages, baseline plus 3 technical options. I just want to know whether have any kind of time frame, more certainty.
So that's looking at the replacement option. So we've awarded a contract to a consultant. They will be reporting back in November with the options, the assessment of the options, and as Michael said, the consideration of a future regulatory regime, which might mean that we're not discharging to the ocean treated wastewater. So November is the date that we expect to have that report.
Pretty good. The other one question is regarding to the kind of to share the accountability, particularly we are aware, Friday have a complete support meeting. I just want to know, because they have different kind of agencies, am I right? The EKIT, CBHB, or some other community agency, and also the affected community group, etc. Who will inform all those people? Just independent community like today, they don't go, pick one. Or is council take the lead to coordinate?
So the meeting tomorrow night, as Don said this morning, is a community-led initiative.
Yeah,
so it's the community that has called their own meeting. They have invited us to attend.
There's a different for ours.
Not our meeting. It's not our meeting, but we've been invited to attend. Based on what might be said tomorrow night and the need, we could look at hosting our own community meeting. So that's not off the table. We'll wait and talk to you next week about that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Right. So the motion before us is that we receive the information on this update. So I'll move that. Do I have a seconder? Pauline. Is there any discussion? Oh, Phil? Just checking.
Okay, no. I just one thing I feel which is good. The best thing that has happened now is people can. After the fire, people were driving past until the 25th of March, and they saw us working on things, but they didn't see anything happening on the trickle filters, and that was what was making him disappointed. If we'd been doing something, I feel we wouldn't be quietly in the bit of mess and drama that we're in at the moment. But I don't quite understand. Yanni asked the question about a state of emergency. Like after the earthquakes, we had a state of emergency and we fixed things and we could just get on ahead and do it straight away. I can't understand why we didn't do that back then, which would have maybe freed up the staff to be able to go and do the direct appointments and all that sort of thing without having to worry about going through the process of what they've had to go to. And I just feel that we could have moved a lot earlier, I'm sorry to say. Yep, and that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Yanni.
Thank you. I want to acknowledge first off that it's really good to be getting these updates, and I know staff said that they would provide them on a regular basis, and that often the written update would be behind the verbal update that was given. So obviously today staff have given even more information. I hope that there's opportunity through the discussions with the contractor not to just use the extra day and hours if they're falling behind the target, but to actually try and aim for a quicker target rather than just use it as a makeup. Obviously, we've got an insurance subcommittee and other staff members who are directly involved in dealing with the contractor. But I just wanted to signal that, after the earthquake with the skirt repairs, we used an alliance to get stuff done quicker than the traditional model, and it worked quite well. And if there's any ability to source additional capacity for our contractor to supplement the work that they're doing, then I think we need to be looking at all of those options, because although it's appreciated that September is a lot better than the end of the year, it's still a heck of a long time for people to have to put up with the odour. The other point that I want to make really clearly is that while I appreciate that there is a concern about the costs associated to the ratepayers, there's also the obligation to our communities in Bromley, in Avonside, in Wolston, in Aranui Wainoni, who are dealing with these awful effects of the odour, both from a health point of view and a stress and an anxiety point of view. And I think we do absolutely, as a city, have obligations to the health and well-being of our citizens and our communities that actually outweigh the cost of doing something to get the problem solved as soon as possible. So, at the end of the day, I previously have asked the question, is there anything that we would be doing if the money wasn't an obstacle? And I've been reassured last week that no, this is not about money. This is about logistics and resources and capacity. rather than any concern for the cost. So I hope that continues going forward, because we do need to get the trickling filters media removed as soon as we can. I am concerned about some of the methodology that I've heard about building things up to the top rather than going through. But I think the other thing is to acknowledge that the community have a meeting tomorrow, and that the social support briefing that we get on Tuesday, I just hope that will be able to be made public as soon as possible, because people are waiting to know what the support is that we are going to give to the most impacted people. And the sooner that we can be public and transparent about that, then I welcome having those conversations. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie, and then Anne.
Look, I understand where Yanni's coming from, and I know that people are frustrated. But I personally think that what we've heard today has showed the council staff and all the contractors and everyone involved has put an awful amount of work into this and an awful amount of thought. And they maybe could have done a little bit better here and there possibly, but I really actually can't see it. And I think they've answered all of our questions very clearly and shown exactly what they've been doing and the work that we don't know about. And it actually makes me upset to think that we don't seem to appreciate it. But I think the safety of the people working on this is paramount. And if we can't work any faster, we can't work any faster. And I don't think there are health effects of what's being produced from the wastewater treatment plant itself. There may be, but I don't think that there probably are. That's what we've been hearing. I think the stress is obviously clear on everyone involved, including us. But I actually wanted to give the staff a round of applause.
Yeah, I think, thank you, Mel. I think the point's been made several times that this has been an unprecedented event and no rule book. And so what we've heard this morning is how hard and fast the team have been working to get this sorted. And, once again, we have an example of the depth and the width of the expertise in our council team. And the responses from staff have been exhaustive and reassuring. So I would like to also express my appreciation for the work being done. I think, as always, the key question is what is our council's role in terms of the wellbeing issue. And I think we are now, we're acknowledging the distress. We're beginning to understand the nature of that distress. We're identifying what council can do in partnership with the community NGOs that are already there, that people trust, and we will find out the best way to get the support that's needed to them in the quickest and most efficient way. And tomorrow night's meeting will be useful because we'll hear from the community exactly what they need. So along with all of us, I'm sure, just want to also express my appreciation for the work done. Thank you.
Pauline?
Yeah, well, I was pretty much going to say exactly that, Anne, in your wise words, that no precedent for this. And it's easy to look back and say, yeah, that maybe we could have done that a bit better. Hindsight is a wonderful thing. But it's just simply a reality that this has been an evolving, unfolding course of events. And I think that the staff have really done brilliantly in compiling really, really good, interesting, detailed information for people. This is what they want, really detailed stuff, and I'm really pleased to see that today and in the previous reports that we've had as well, and also that we're going to have regular reports like this. They're just receiving reports, so I think that's a really good idea. And I think the fact that we've now, local residents have got this timeline now, 16 weeks, and I believe that as that media comes out, the odour will gradually reduce over that 16 weeks. It may be a little bit worse in the beginning, and then it should reduce, I believe. So I think having that timeline is going to give people possibly, hopefully, the strength to get through to that end date. So I want to reiterate the thanks as well for all the work on this as well.
Sarah, then Tim.
Once again, reiteration of thanks to staff for the enormous amount of work they've done under a huge amount of pressure, both from councillors who have been on their backs constantly, and from the community who are rightly distressed by the extent of the odour. While it is really tempting to want to go in and fix things straight away and do whatever we can so that we can show we're doing something, what's also really, really clear is that blundering in without the backing of the advice from experts could have seen us in a much greater mess than is currently underway. Thank you.
Tim.
Thank you. I don't know how many people around this table have been responsible for crews working in a high-risk environment, but 12 hours a day, 6 days a week in a high-risk environment is always a concern, especially when you're doing your health and safety assessments, etc. So I want to thank the staff for coming up with that, and also the contractor and working together to try and maintain, and I'm sure you will maintain, the safest possible working environment for these crews. And if it has to slow down or take a gap because fatigue in a high-risk environment, 6 days a week, 12 hours a day is always a concern for those running the crews. So you've done a great job. It's now time to get on with it, and I hope we just leave you guys alone to get on with it, and the update would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Celeste? Aaron?
I don't think there's a huge amount left to say, but I just also want to briefly acknowledge the impact on residents and communities, particularly in the east. It has been a very distressing situation, and I think that I'm really pleased that now we've got some certainty moving forward. I think that really helps a lot in terms of understanding what the next steps are. Like others, I also want to acknowledge the role and the hard work of staff. I think it's easy to pose solutions, but to deliver on those is incredibly difficult. And this was a catastrophic event that has had to be managed in a pandemic. So it's a pretty unusual situation. And I'm just focused on what the next steps are and moving forward in a positive way.
Aaron?
A couple of things. I'm very grateful that we've got to where we've got to today. That's a good point moving forward. I do believe we could have got here quicker, and a lot of people have said thank you to the staff. I certainly don't disagree with that, but I want to say thank you to the people that live out there and live near this, because they're putting up with something for the rest of our city that really most people couldn't put up with. Maybe about 6 weeks ago, I remember driving around the ring road with my kids. We were on our way to work, and we had the windows down because it was quite warm, and one of my sons said, "What the hell is that?" And just could not fathom the smell. We live in Herwood. This doesn't reach Herwood very well. I'm not aware of it actually reaching Herwood, but often coming through town, going over the overbridge by the skate park, you'd pick it up there when it wafts across. So the people on that side of town have put up with something just unfathomable for those that don't live it or experience it, and let's never lose sight of that. These every single one of them is putting up with something that no one should have to put up with. So the sooner this can be done, the better. I am a little dubious around the timelines because there are people watching online. I'm a member of the Bromley group chat, and once that question was asked before, they're putting up that they were reporting it in December and through to January. Some gave up in January. I do recall it myself in January after the big rain drop we had in January. And let's not forget there was a really big rain dump. I'm going to go with the 15th of December. Around that date, there's a really big one. So it's interesting that people are coming up on that chat saying the 17th and 18th of December and stuff was the date they started reporting it. So I will just put that into the public domain here, that people are making counterclaims to what's being said at this table, and let's be mindful of them, because they're the ones that are living with the worst of it. They have to live with it 24 hours a day if they're home all the time, and some of them are lucky enough to go to work on the other side of town to get relief. And so let's always be mindful of them as well. And thank you to the staff that do all their hard work.
Thank you. In my column today, I publicly apologised for the fact that we really didn't do good enough, well enough, getting the information out to people. I've acknowledged that it's a catastrophic fire of enormous proportions,
and there's been a massive job going on behind the scenes. But we didn't front foot the showing of what was going on behind the scenes. And I regret that, and I've apologised for that. The commitment that we're making with these regular reports, front-facing, either at council meetings or at finance and performance meetings, is to ensure that we are constantly keeping the very people that have been referred to, the residents who are affected by this dreadful stench that arises in particular around the days that we've described. And I think that with that in mind, we will ensure that people are kept regularly up to date. The invitation from the community to attend their public meeting tomorrow night has been well received by us as councillors and by staff, and that will that will enable us to be talking directly with people as we did before Christmas. So the way that we approach things before Christmas, that was the way to go. After Christmas and Omicron and the risk around public meetings, it meant that there wasn't that update. And so this is an opportunity to set things back on track. When we started this contracting process, the early estimates saw this stretching out until the end of the year. And now we can expect the work to be completed by early spring. That's a massive, it's a significant improvement on where we were. And the biggest message that I've been receiving from people is that tell us what's happening, tell us when it will be done. And so now we have some certainty around that, and we have set up the structures so that we've got the insurance subcommittee meeting between council and finance and performance. We've got sort of that ongoing focus, and and we will ensure that there are better ways of communicating with people, and it doesn't require an unprecedented event to know that that is absolutely bottom line in every case. So on that note, I will put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That is carried. Thank you very much, and thank you very much to the entire team who has put this presentation together. It is hugely appreciated, not just by councillors but by the community as well. It's 12:38. We're going to try and see if we can get this meeting finished. Dawn and I have a meeting which we have to be upstairs ready for at 1 o'clock on the dot. So if we can get the last 3 items done in a quick amount of time. So I'm gonna ask for your indulgence on item 12, draft submission on natural hazards bill. I would like you to support the delegation to the Mayor and Mike Davidson to complete and approve the submission on the natural hazards insurance bill. It has to be submitted tomorrow. Happy to move Sam McDonald, seconded by Tim Scandrett. I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Then we've got the, I might do if I do the Mayor's report, then I can leave someone else in the chair for the last 5 minutes to do the hearings report. So the Mayor's report is, where is it? Read it all? Okay, so moved by Sarah, seconded by Tim. Any discussion? Put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. And then the hearings report to the council on Worcester Street and Antigua Street Central City Cycleway connections. So I don't know if we've got anyone here for that.
Yes, we have.
Okay, yes. Yanni, did you have any questions on that?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Okay.
I've emailed them through to Megan. Yeah.
Right. So Yanni sent through some questions, but
yeah, sorry, there was some confusion this morning as well. So
I can't hear you. Sorry.
Takes off. Sorry, I thought I'd pushed it. Technology issues. There were some questions raised this morning around Worcester Street, the safety audit. So that was asked through the annual plan process and will be responded through the annual plan process. As far as accessibility and safety audit reviews go, safety audits have been done, and we are undertaking our designs in line with standard requirements for accessibility for all users.
Okay. So, Melanie, did you want to introduce the report? Sorry, I should have come to you first.
Sorry, there was another question too.
What was
do
the
you want
other
me just
question?
to wait until a minute? Oh, I was just wondering if we've what the emergency services response has been to the designs. I just know in the past that they have raised some concern, and obviously, you know, the issue that we've had with the Justice and Emergency Precinct along.
Leanne, this is probably covered in the introduction.
Yeah,
I think we should have it
I'm
first.
going to let Melanie
that's cool.
introduce the report.
Yeah, that's fine.
I wasn't going to talk about that, but no, if you wanted, basically, it was me as chair, Councillor Templeton and Councillor Chen, the three of us in the hearings panel, and staff did a great presentation, and we worked very collaboratively to come to all of our recommendations, and I commented on that at the time. The hearings folder, if you wanted to see where the original documents were, is there. We asked a lot of questions. It was about 66 questions, and we got feedback on those relatively quickly, and it was really great. There's a safety audit in there under attachment B too for Yanni. So for the changes that we made or recommended, so for the first section north of Antigua boat sheds, we didn't really make any changes, but we did ask just for additional signage because of course there's all the competing pedestrians and users of that space. And to also ask and work with the CDHB because staff at the hospital are quite keen to be able to use the other bridge that's currently closed. It used to be open in the past. And then there were a lot of things out of scope, but we've asked staff to look at those around extending the bike path on Wolston Ave, and also to look at that section that's not actually covered in this hearing panel between south of the bridge and down to St Asaph, especially safety in front of the CDHB parking building. But there was a lot of little issues there. For Worcester Street, a lot of people didn't realise that this was just a temporary fix that is going to be quite cheap to do. There's just paint and a speed hump along there. So that was one, I guess, takeaway message to be clear on next time. But the additional recommendations we had were in number 5 about yellow lines next to the speed hump to stop people parking on top of it, to educate people about sharrows, and number 6. Number 7, to recommend that area for streets for people, and to number 8, to look at the traffic signal phasing, because people brought that up. And there was discussion around the section of Worcester Street between Latimer Square and Manchester Street too, which we had feedback over. And then the last section, which was the most controversial one, I suppose, was Antigua between St Asaph and Morehouse Ave. And the 3 big things that came up, one was the width of the... So for that section, the main things that were the approvals are about having 30 k's an hour, 2 single direction separated cycle lanes on either side of the road, raised platforms, and then the shared path along the west side of the road. The 3 things that people talked about most were the width of the cycleway going south on the east side, which is slightly under what is preferred, recommended, the 2.4 metre width. So instead of that, it's 2.2 and 2.3 meters wide. So that's one of the recommendations, to look at how that can be made slightly wider. And the next one, well, the main one then was about about the entrance into Parakiori. So there's an entrance way for service vehicles that can go in and out, and then the other entrance is actually an exit for vehicles to come out. So people will not, the ordinary person would not be driving in there. But it was around visibility and trees that people commented on, and also just about having signage for vehicles that were leaving. So that was it in a nutshell.
Thank you very much. Does anyone want to move this? Got a question? Who? You'll move it? Yeah. Yep, Jake will move it. Oh, sorry.
I can second it.
Melanie's moved it. Jake will second it. Right.
I already stole your hands.
Aaron, question.
Yeah, just the one question around, why's the budget not in here? Normally in all our reports the financial implications are there, and you look and go, oh, that's a good buy, or oh, maybe not.
Can you put your microphone on when you... Sorry.
I'm sorry, you shouldn't have to tell me twice in a meeting. The budget is in the staff report. You need to click on the staff report so I can confirm the budget. Sorry, it's written on my book over there. The budget for the Worcester Street and Antigua Street bridges is about 160,000 out of, thank you, 160,000 from CPMS number 52228, and that has in financial year 22 that has a budget of 720,000. So we're using 160 of that.
Oh, so this is only 160,000.
That's for Worcester Street and Antigua Street. Yes, the Worcester Street and Antigua Street at the boat sheds.
Yeah.
And Antigua Street itself is not. It's 3.7 million, and that's out of
for one block.
Yep. I've got the CPMS number there, so it should have been in the report, but it's in the staff reports that are attached to that report.
Yeah, so because I always
For the hearings report.
thought, and I could be completely wrong, but when these come to council, because this is the meeting that the public look at and seeing that those budgets are in here.
They are. They're in the staff report that's attached to this report. That is part of this paperwork for this hearings report.
It should be there for Joe Average.
Yeah, well, on.
It's not hidden, and it's in every finance and performance report as well.
Yeah, but obviously all the ratepayers are just diving into those reports all the time, Sarah. But they.
Oh.
But well, I just, and in the interest of openness and transparency, why is it not just in the report?
I'm leaving the
One
room
line.
in 5 minutes, as is the chief executive. So
You'll miss the fun.
No, I'll leave it to Andrew to run the rest of the meeting.
You lucky.
At least I've got a backstop. But the thing is that would you normally have written that amount into the report?
I'm sorry, we don't write the report.
Right.
So the hearings panel report is written as a result of the hearings panel. I didn't write it, but
So the hearings panel process is independent of the
transport team,
advice and the transport advice. So,
Yes.
this hearings panel report has relied on the fact that it's within the staff advice that's attached to the report.
Yep.
Okay.
It's part of the package that the councillors get through the hearings panel.
Yeah, the full package is there, so
Yes, it
including the
is.
submissions.
Right, and just finally, is the what's the split on this one? Who's putting in what, or is this all government money?
No, these are both NZTA subsidised and approved for subsidy projects. So they're standard transport projects, not shovel-ready funding.
So is this one like a 50-50?
49-51. 51 for NZTA.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I had who else? Yanni and then Mike.
All right, I just wanted to check, and it's really hard when we get the links in the report on the hub because it's very hard to access those documents. So apologies if this is covered in those ones. But the emergency services vehicles, what's been the response from the ambulance, police?
Thank you. We
fire?
heard it before.
So emergency services, FENS have been consulted. They were consulted prior to us even going out to consultation. So we've talked to them. They have no concerns.
Yep. Thank you. I've got Mike.
Sorry, St John's?
Yes, they're part of foreign emergency services. Yes.
Mike and then Phil.
Thank you. Just quickly, it's good to see that one of the sites have hit the cycleway wide, and it's not possible to do on the other side. Can I just get reassurance that actually, in widening the west side, is it, that you won't reduce the east side? No.
Okay, Phil.
Whichever way, east or west, it's not affecting the other side. No.
Yeah, and Mike, that sort of leads on to mine. I'm just worried that if you widen anything, please don't take anything out of the road, because the road's almost too narrow as it is.
No.
Hmm?
Yep, Richard can answer that. So
Trucks
Richard's the
are
project manager.
3.4 metres wide.
Richard's going to answer.
So to get the 2.5 wide length or width of the cycleway, we've taken it from 100 mil from the existing footpath and 100 mil from the rain garden. So the carriageways and the east side will not change. Those widths won't change.
All good? Right. Now, I've got a mover, Melanie, a seconder, Jake. Any debate? I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no.
No.
So,
I was going to say, because I did have my arm up, but the if you could split the vote, I think the Worcester and Antigua out separate.
can you just
Bridge,
refer
please?
to which bit that you'd like the Worcester Antigua bit voted separately?
Yes, please.
So can we record
Worcester and the
Aaron's
Antigua
vote
Bridge.
against on that one?
No, that's not against. I'm voting for those two.
You're voting for
Yeah, that's
which,
relatively inexpensive and it all makes sense. I'm only voting against the budget. The design for the other ones
which
looks
one?
amazing.
Which one are you voting against?
Against the one block for 3.6 million.
Right. So which block's that?
Morehouse too.
It's the Antigua Street.
That's what I said. Yeah.
No, but the other one's the bridge, Antigua Street
No,
Bridge.
I said Antigua.
Okay, that's all right.
Anyway, I mean
Just say yes and no. Let's just
block. So the Antigua to Morehouse, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's the Morehouse.
It's just the block.
Yeah. So,
Not on the design. The design's fantastic.
That's Aaron against. And who else is voting against the motion?
Just everything to make it easy.
Dan's voting against.
It's
it,
consistent.
Just to make it easier. And Yanni, where are you? Where are you? Yanni?
Sorry, I wanted to debate. I'm just against.
No, Yanni.
I'm concerned with
What's
the
your
design.
vote? I've got the vote.
Against because of concern with the design.
Okay.
and safety.
So that's against, right? All right. So, sorry. Okay, and Phil's against Aaron. Yeah. All right. So that. Excuse me. Excuse me. Excuse me. Oops. Sorry. Oh dear. Kia whakaerea te tapu, kia wātea ai te ara, kia turuku, kia turuki whakataha ai, kia turuki whakataha ai. Humie, huie, tai kie. I declare the meeting closed.